Good morning, everybody. As you're joining, we're just gonna let everybody in from the waiting room. So it'll be just a second before we get started. All right, a couple of people still joining.
There you are.
Just bigger.
Good morning, Richard. You can just go ahead and mute yourself. We're just letting everybody into the Zoom before we get started.
Well,
You can go ahead and do it.
There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the March convening of the Governor's Pardon Advisory Board. I'm Mel Barnes, Chief Legal Counsel to Governor Evers. Joining us today from the Pardon Advisory Board, we have Mr. Anthony Cooper Sr., who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Reentry Services for Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development, and he received a pardon from Governor Evers in 2021. We also have with us Reverend Jerry Hancock, who is the Director of the Prison Ministry Project, who previously served as a public defender, deputy district attorney, and administrator at the Department of Justice's Division of Law Enforcement Services. Also joining us on the board today, we have Reverend John Vickers Sr., who is the founding pastor of Christ the Baptist Church in Milwaukee. Christ the King Baptist Church in Milwaukee, get that right one of these times. And he additionally serves as the board chairman for King's Academy Christian School and is an associate chaplain for the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department. We also have Cindy O'Donnell, who served as the deputy secretary of the Department of Corrections under Governors Thompson, McCallum, and Doyle. She also served as division administrator under Attorney Generals Lautenschlager and Van Hollen. Joining us as well on the board today is former Chief of Police Noble Ray. He served with the Madison Police Department for almost 28 years and was Chief of Police from 2004 to 2013. Noble Ray led the U.S. Justice Department's Policing Practices and Accountability Initiative and currently provides racial bias training for law enforcement agencies around the nation. And I believe that is all of our board members. Did I miss anybody? No. All right. Hearing none, I will welcome all of our applicants and everyone else who's joined us via Zoom today. I want to let you know that this is an open meeting. We are being streamed live on YouTube today. And we will go through a couple housekeeping things before we begin. I'll just ask you to mute yourselves and keep your video off until it is your turn to present your application to the board. That way, we as board members will be able to focus on the person presenting, and it will help make our Zoom screen work a little bit better. If you do run into any sort of IT issues, don't worry. Someone from my team will reach out to you and sort out any video or sound issues. If we need to kind of skip you in order and come back to you in order to make sure that we can see and hear you, we will do that, and don't worry about it. We will give everybody about 5 minutes to share your story once your name is called, and then we may have some questions for you from the board. We did send you some questions in advance that you can hopefully speak to during that first 5 minutes, but we may have some follow-up questions. If we don't have questions for you, don't worry about it. We have reviewed all of your application materials in detail, and it's possible that just answered all of our questions. We will go in the order of applicants on the agenda that is posted for this meeting, and we may move a little quicker and get through things early, but just so you all know, we won't start your group before the time that is posted for the beginning of that section, just to make sure that we are compliant with our open meetings notice. All right, so we will call applicants one by one, and Then I will kind of run through these housekeeping items at the top of each section of applicants. But with that, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone, welcome board members, and welcome applicants. Our first set, starting at 8:30 here, begins with applicant Keith Quitek. Keith, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but if you're able to turn on your camera and unmute, we are ready to hear from you.
I'm right here.
Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about why you've applied for a pardon, the crimes that led to your conviction, what you've done since, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay. Good morning. What the reason why I've began trying to start my partners because I'm in the towing industry, and eventually I plan to get out because it's not forever. I don't plan for it to be forever, anyways. And I wanted to start my own security company eventually. And I was gonna start out by saying, I was convicted in 2002, 2003, and while I was in there, I did 8 years and 8 months total. And from the beginning, I always thought I'm going to do something productive with my time while I'm there. So I wanted to go to Fox Lake, and Fox Lake was the only prison that had the auto body and welding technical trade, Hello?
Mr. Quitek, I'm going to have you pause for a second. We're having an echo with our live stream here. Let's see if we can get that sorted out.
Okay.
Okay, I think that was on mine, so my apologies. Would you go ahead and pick up? Thank you.
Okay, so I ended up getting to Fox Lake, and I did the auto body trade and learned how to do body work, do paint, weld, straighten frames. I did everything, and my plan was when I got out to do that type of work, but I ended up getting into a different field, a profession. Like I worked at a buddy's car lot for a little while doing detailing. Then I worked for Caliber, a company that painted parts for Harley Davidson. So I did that for almost 3 years. And then I got into the towing industry. So that's what I do now. I've been doing this since March of 14 till today. And I bought my first tow truck while I worked the job at Caliber. And then I haven't quit. I had at one point I had 6 tow trucks. Now I just got 3. And I got 2 employees. I got 2 full-time employees. I got 2 kids now. I'm a provider. I got big responsibilities. Like I never imagined living the life I'm living now, but I am. I work every day, all day, from the time I wake up, the time I go to sleep. It's 12, 14, 16-hour days sometimes, but it beats any other type of life I used to live before I went to prison. Like it's totally different. And I never imagined living this type of life, but I'm glad I did. I never had anybody to show me anything better when I was growing up. I really didn't. And I never met my real dad. I had a stepdad, but they was always drinking. I always had issues, basically a broken home. But the home I've been building since I've been home is a whole lot different. Like when I got 2 babies now, 4.5, my little boy, my girl 6. And I got a house being built right now. It's about to be done the end of the month. I bought some property in Grafton a year and a half ago. And now I got a house being built. It'll be done the end of this month. And probably moving by the summer by the time I'm able to furnish it because stuff is not cheap. I don't know. Any questions anybody has for me, though? I'm here. I can tell you anything you want to know about me.
Mr. Quitek, before I open up for questions from the board, can I just ask you to speak a little bit about your offenses and what led to your conviction in the first place, and kind of how serving your sentence went for you?
How what went for me?
How your sentence?
What led to it? I don't know. What led to it is I was not living the right life. I never had any drug issues. The worst thing I ever smoked was weed. but that was it. I just was hanging around the wrong people. I did not have any type of guidance. I was living the wrong type of life. And then, I was messing around with a chick. To be honest with you, my case involves a woman, and she was not living the right type of life either. And we just got wrapped up with each other in some type of way. We were together for like 6 months, and then, we ended up robbing somebody, to be honest with you. That's what happened. And it was a guy she was messing around with on the side. She was hustling him. I don't know. It was just a real screwed up situation. And, money was an issue. And honestly, I did not make any money working a job back then. I had jobs throughout the years, but I never stuck with them. Probably 4 to 6 months at each job I ever had. But I always tried to keep a money flow because I always was working. I was always doing some type of job. No matter if I was I used to work at a hotel in Brookfield, on Brookfield Road and Bluemont Road. And I worked there for like maybe 9 months. It's the longest job I ever had.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Critic. I saw that Reverend Hancock, it looked like you had a question. So I'll open up to questions from the board and we can start with you if you'd like.
Thanks. Keith, you've done an amazing job since you've gotten out of prison. And I want to ask you something that happened a long time ago. Can you tell me about how you used the gun in the robbery?
I hit him with it.
Why did you have the gun in the first place?
Well, I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, I had it. I used to keep one back then because no real reason.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Cindy?
Two questions. The first, the application encourages letters of support, doesn't require it, but you didn't submit any. Can you tell us why not?
I thought I just needed to get letters for reference. I didn't know. I could have. I would have, but if I could have, I didn't know. I needed to.
Okay.
I know I had a few letters. I think they were just from people I grew up with or somebody I knew for a while. I didn't have very many of them. I know that.
Okay. My second question is about the 2002, the intimidating a witness. Can you tell us what were the facts around that?
That was part of my case. What happened with that was I sent a letter to one of my friends to talk to the victim because they knew him. We all knew him, and this wasn't just a random person walking down the street, It was a person that we all knew they had money. We all knew they sold plenty of drugs. So, and I asked them to talk to the person so they wouldn't come to my trial. That was the plan. And I mean, that in the letter, if you guys see the letter in my reports and my discovery, you'll see that that's exactly what I attempted to do. And it started my whole case over. And, I was put in the hole right away in the county jail. My trial was September 23rd of 2002. And on that date, we went to court and they started the whole case over. I was put in the hole from that date all the way till I was sent to Dodge till April the following year of 2003. And I was sitting in Dodge for almost a year while that case was pending. It was intimidation of witness as a felon, as a habitual, and then solicitation to commit a felony as a habitual. So I was facing 32 more years just off of that letter. And then they eventually dropped it down to a misdemeanor as a habitual, and they gave me another year for that case. And the person that actually I sent the letter to, which was Jimmy, he ended up getting a couple years probation. He did some time as well. I forget how much time. That's all I can really say about that situation. That's that's what the intimidation of witness was about, though.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Just one for me, Mr. Quiddick. I see that you also had a temporary restraining order issued around the same time in 1999. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened there?
That was with a girlfriend I had at the time. We lived together. That was 99. Yeah, that was like the only person I ever had an apartment with back then. And I guess we had our differences. I think it only lasted like a couple days, but we lived together. And I think we got into an argument or something. I don't know. I think I was on probation. I was on probation at the time for a misdemeanor, entry into locked vehicle. And oh man, I'm glad that ended though, because I ended up going to house correction back then, and I got revocated for something unrelated to the misdemeanor, but that's who the restraining order was for, was what it was about. We just got into an argument, and I don't know. I think I'm glad that ended though, because when I was in jail for them, I think I did like 9-10 months in house correction back then, and she ended up getting married while I was in jail and all types of mess, and it just was. That's about it about that situation. That was horrible too. But it was, I don't know. I never hit a woman. I never did any domestic violence stuff. Like I don't do that. But that was like the arguments we had, and then the neighbors called the police on us, and we lived in an apartment building at the time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quiddick. Any other questions from the board? All right. Thank you so much for joining us and for talking with us today. You're welcome to drop off the Zoom. You don't have to stay on for the rest of the day. You're free to go about your business. You can expect to hear from us in about a month or so. Someone from my office will reach out and we will be in touch then. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
All right, our next applicant is Sterling Odom. Mr. Odom, are you on the Zoom?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Odom.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. Are you able to turn on your video?
Okay, let me see here. Can you see me now?
Yep, that's perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for joining us today. Would you briefly walk us through your offenses and how your sentence went, what you've done since the completion of your sentence, and what you do in your community, and why you were seeking a pardon today?
Yes. Again, my name is Sterling Odom, and back then, I believe it was in 1996. I was 18 years old, and it was for a forgery charge for cashing some bad checks and things like that. At the time, to be honest, I was young, kind of naive, running with the wrong crowd and things like that. And, just the temptation of seeing everybody else having, a little money doing this and doing that. And, being naive, oh, you won't get caught, it'll be fine and all that. I kind of got caught up in that at a young age. I had just moved out of my parents' house. So I really didn't know all of the, the lingo of things, how things work. So since then, that's kind of was like a scar on my record. I tried my best to keep my nose clean. I just had, my wife at the time was pregnant with our first child. So we had our first child, got our first place and things like that, and moved out of town. I started doing photography professionally back in 2001. And then the snowball effect kind of picked up with that. I started my own photography company then. And then still to this day, next month, I'll be celebrating my 22-year anniversary for doing photography professionally. And I've never never been arrested or had any other crimes or anything since that happened. And since then, I started my own nonprofit organization called the Soul Legacy Foundation, which what I do, I give back to nursing homes. I offer free photography services to all of the nursing homes and the patients that are in hospice and things like that. So I'm doing my part in that on that behalf to give back to the community. And it's kind of like a scar on my record, but God has blessed me to be selected to do a lot of upscale. I have a lot of high-end clients. One of my biggest clients was the President of the United States' wife, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. Actually, hit me up to do a photography shoot for her. And that kind of started the snowball effect. I've been doing a lot of our elected officials, Senator Tammy Baldwin, Congresswoman Glenn Moore, the mayor, just a lot of people in our community. I try to give back and do positive things. And I'm 45 years old now, and I've never been in any kind of trouble, none whatsoever since then. And it's a blemish on my record, and I'm trying to build a legacy for my children and my bloodline to where I can put it behind me and to kind of be an example for my family forward. Because in my generation, my family considers me to be one of the patriarchs of my family. So I just want to kind of stay positive and put that behind me so I can move forward and be a perfect person. And that's pretty much where I'm now. I'm blessed, with good health, good, my family supports me, the community supports me. I do a lot of things for the community and just trying to live right and do right, Like I said, that's a scar on my record. I've never been in anything. There's nothing else on my record since then. And even if I think back, I try to just, children that, hey, don't get caught up in the temptation of what's good and what's not, because at the end of the day, it will catch up with you. So that's what I try to instill in my boys. And that's pretty much it. Stay prayed up and thank God that I'm an opportunity, to be on the Zoom with you guys to even hopefully get the pardon. So I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity for listening to me and giving me, a second chance. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Odom. Any questions from the board? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Odom,
Yeah.
The judge and district attorney of Milwaukee support your application. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good because at the end of the day, they're giving me a second chance, and they honestly don't have to do that, and I appreciate that. And I just want to thank everybody that's in my corner and supporting me and kind of, to a certain extent, maybe understanding that I was young then, and I made mistakes. And thank God that they're giving me the opportunity, and I appreciate them for that.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Odom. As I mentioned, you don't have to hang out on the Zoom. You're welcome to drop off and go about your day. And you can expect to hear from us in about a month. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Next up is Ms. Green. I think I saw Ms. Green in the Zoom. If you're able to, there we go.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Ms. Green. If you wouldn't mind just walking us through a brief summary of your offenses, how your sentence went, what you've done since the completion, how you're involved in your community, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay. So first off, I do want to say thank you guys for listening. Thanks for this opportunity. I feel like I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. I am nervous, but I'll get going. So first of all, I didn't come from a stable household or a good environment. My foundation was very rocky. Between first grade and fifth grade, I lived in 8 different households. By the time I went to high school, my sister, which is a year older than me, she got her own place. So at 15 years old, I was under the care of my 16-year-old sister, who again, luckily had stability. The neighborhood I grew up in, always fighting, drugs, violence is what I was really accustomed to growing up. So as a teenager, I was a fighter. I wrestled in high school. I did boxing. I was athletic. I had a coworker when I was 16. I had a coworker who knew of my past, who knew that, I had a couple fights here and there. She actually had a friend who had some issues with someone else. And they ended up calling me like, hey, my friend want to come pick you up. It's about to be a fight. So I did leave home and I took a bat with me. So when we entered, it actually took place at a gas station. When we went to the gas station, I took the bat and I began vandalizing the vehicle. There were two fights going on and, I was just vandalizing the vehicle. Some other parties came out the gas station and they began kind of taking the bat out my hand. They started grabbing at the bat. For a minute, we kind of tussled. I did swing the bat multiple times. I believe there were 2 individuals that did receive lacerations to their face and to their head during that tussle. From there, I was sentenced to 6 months with Huber release. I had release for school. I was in high school. I was in high school when the incident occurred, but by the time I was being sentenced, I was already in college. So my outlet as a child was learning. I've always been a learner, always had straight A student. I was always a straight A student. Never had bad grades ever in my life. A B was disappointing to me. So I ended up being in college at 17 for a criminal justice degree. I wanted to be a forensic scientist. During my sentence, I did have a few run-ins. I don't believe any of them were major. I had an incident where it was a miscommunication and I was removed from Huber and I was placed in a house correction after it was communicated that they did not want me or the co-defendant to communicate, but we were in the same pod where we were both going to school. So I was removed. Once my PO found out that I was removed, she did allow me to walk across the stage for high school. So I was released and I finished the remainder of my time in Huber. I completed drug treatment classes. I completed anger management. I really enjoyed the information. I was heavily involved in both. I also completed a life skills class on my own through SDC during that time frame, just because I did want different. I wanted better. I didn't want to be a criminal. So the climax of my turning point, let me go back. I did complete probation, the 3 years of probation. I want to say maybe year 2, I ended up pregnant with my first child. So the climax in my life where I did a complete turnaround was motherhood. So I knew the things that I experienced, I did not want my child to ever go through. I got into church immediately after becoming a mother, literally turned my life around. I was a member of Crossing Jordan, where that church molds everyone. They really gravitate to youth and at-risk youth, and molded me into the woman that I am today. I always give thanks to that ministry for that. From there, I've done a lot. I started a young women support group. That particular support group was for young women who at one point may have been like myself, that experienced childhood trauma, and they really just needed to get back into the world on a better note. A few other things, I took notes and I'm all over the place with it. I wrote my first gospel stage play called Love Stings. That book is a fiction book that displayed childhood trauma and many people in the inner city and poverty face. That particular book was life-changing. That play was life-changing. I ultimately turned it into a book. It is a bestseller, Love Stings. From there, I opened Unbreakable Book Publishing Company, which was a Christian-based book publishing company. I've published books for multiple people with disabilities, people who, overcame drug addiction, you name it. Books on marriage, books on parents, and I'm currently writing one now, a book that I dedicated to my children. That's gonna be, it has a wide array of topics. As far as jobs, I worked a lot of temp services, customer service throughout the years. And because I was, kind of displaced with my background, it kind of hindered me a lot. I took on entrepreneurship early. So with entrepreneurship 5 years ago, my kids and I, and my husband, we started Paparazzi Ice Cream Shop, the only 5-star ice cream shop in Milwaukee and surrounding cities. Within 5 years, we ended up opening up 3 locations. We've had the privilege to work with so many different organizations and companies where we donate ice cream, give back to the community in numerous ways, whether it's, just showing up. I've done motivational speaking for many years for at-risk youth. I did skits and plays throughout the community, for the most part, performing at Stop the Violence initiatives. I've been a part of many cleanups, peace walks, veterans events, homeless, feeding the homeless. That's something that my family and I do every year for about 8 years. So as far as the actual crime itself, I've always always been very, very regretful of what I did. They didn't deserve it. It was, they were totally innocent. It's just something I've had to live with. I've always showed remorse. I've never given an excuse because there is no excuse, none whatsoever. So I take accountability for my actions. As far as what I'll do with this pardon, it's no telling. I'm a person, I've been a life coach, a business mentor, and a business coach to many. I do consider myself a public figure because of the mark that I've left on the city of Milwaukee, the positive mark, should I say. But with this pardon, I don't know what I'll do. Maybe something in the medical field. Maybe I'll be a pilot. I'm a learner by nature. Many streams of revenue. I've done so much. Author, real estate. I don't know. It'll be a fresh start. I'll have forgiveness from the court systems, of course, from the community, and it'll really bring closure to that traumatic that I had.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Thanks so much for sharing that. Any questions from the board? Cindy.
Morning, Ms. Green. I just want to go back to the crime. It's just so puzzling to me why you didn't know these people, right?
Yeah.
You had no beef with them.
No.
So in your application, you refer to them as the victims as rivals. Was there some gang element to this, or I thought it was interesting your choice of word.
So they were rivals to the person that I was helping. It had been feud going on for years between those parties. So that's why I considered them the rivals. So they were the opposing side of theirs.
Okay, but they weren't your rivals. I mean,
correct.
Okay. And as you pointed out, they had lacerations. One of the victim ended up with 7 stitches and the other victim with 4 stitches. And I know you were ordered as part of the court hearing not to have any contact with them. Since that, have you ever encountered them again or?
Never.
Okay.
To be honest, unfortunately, I don't even know how they look. I didn't see any faces. I didn't know them. I didn't know the past feuds that they had. So no.
Right. And I mean, I think you have accepted how serious this was and right from the get-go, because even in the criminal complaint, it lists your statement. You wrote out an apology at the time.
Definitely.
Which, I mean, so you quickly, I think, recognized this wasn't something you should have done or wanted to do or would normally do. And it's just puzzling to me why you did it.
Right.
Maybe it's puzzling to you.
Always have. I had no business jumping into something that wasn't mine. And for it, I've suffered consequences, many. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Reverend Hancock?
Ms. Green, the district attorney's office supports your application. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good. It's a wonderful feeling.
Okay. Well, yeah, you've had an amazing life.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ms. Green. As I mentioned, you can expect to hear from our office in about a month. So thank you for your continued patience. I know that you've already waited a significant amount of time to get a hearing before the board. You don't need to hang out on the rest of the Zoom. You're welcome to drop off and go about the rest of your day if you'd like. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. You all have a blessed day.
Take care. Next, we have Ms. Tammy Harris, who I know I saw on the Zoom. Ms. Harris, would you unmute and turn on your camera if you're able, please?
Good morning.
Welcome, Ms. Harris. Would you please walk us through a brief summary of your offenses, how your sentence went, what you've done since, and why you're seeking a pardon today?
Sure. I was 18 years old. I was not living at home anymore. I was working at a credit union. I was part-time, and one day I got it into my head that I was going to borrow some money out of the drawer. And this went on over a period of several months. It became $3,000 all total at the end. I had gotten to the point where every time I heard a siren, I thought somebody was coming to get me because it just was really eating at me. And then there was a day that the drawer was off more than the 3,000 or so, I thought. My supervisor and another teller counted the drawer the next morning, and it was not off except for the 3,000. And she called me at home and said, there's money missing from the drawer. We need you to come in and look for it. You must have left it somewhere. So I drove into work, and I just went right into my supervisor's office, and I told her that I had taken it. She asked if I could put it back, and I said no, that I had spent it. She asked me to wait in another room. She had to call in the board president and the vice president from the main branch. And I can remember standing in the bathroom with my head in the corner in the dark and just wishing that God would take me right then and there, because I was so ashamed of what I had done. And they came in and again talked to me about what I had done, asked if there was any way to put it back, and I said no. So I was terminated and sent home. I called my mom, told her what I did. She had me go to the hospital the next morning. I spent a week in the psychiatric ward, and a detective came to visit me there and read me my rights. We talked about what had happened. He asked if I had any suggestions for how not to have this happen again. And I said, well, a teller shouldn't be counting their own drawer at the end of the day. There should be somebody else who's helping to make sure that the drawer is okay. So it's been hard. I got 3 years probation, restitution, and community service, all of which I completed, but my probation ended up turning into 10 years because that's how long it took me to pay everything back. I got married, had a baby, got divorced, went back to school, got my associate's degree in accounting. Met my husband that I'm with now. We'll be married 30 years this year. We have a daughter. I've got into, we had an adult family home in the 90s, and started taking care of 2 disabled adults, and got involved with the RAINS program, which was a therapeutic writing program for people with disabilities. And I just felt like I kind of found my world was the nonprofit world, just because it's a mission-based work. So I was at RAINS. I then went to Humane Society, worked there 5 years, went to community or Consumer Credit Counseling or Family Service Association. While I was at the shelter, I got my bachelor's degree online and worked full time. And I did apply for a pardon once or twice before. The last time was, I think, back in the 90s under Tommy Thompson, and I was told no, that I didn't need one. And honestly, I've found church. I've always known God, but connected with the church, taught Sunday school, led a youth group, just got involved and tried to give back as much as I could. I'm not ashamed of what I've done anymore, because I know God forgave me. I've forgiven myself. I think that took longer. And having the pardon would be a blessing. Actually, my business partner that I started the business with, was the one who suggested that I try again. The last time I submitted the application, I had a ton of letters of support. This time I only submitted 2. But I don't know. I guess I just feel like the pardon would help. I'm in the financial world. We do representative payee for people with disabilities, also help people who just want help with their finances. And God uses all things for good, and I don't hide my felony from anybody. My kids know, my fellow clients know. I talk to anybody, and it gives me a way to connect with people who maybe have done something and think that they can't get past it. And I'm here to tell them that they can move on, they can make it right, they can do better.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Questions from the board? Chief Ray.
Yeah, just a quick question, Ms. Harris. Could you talk a bit about what went into you winning the Citizens Award for the Elks Club?
That's while I was at the Humane Society, I think. I was nominated for the Citizens Award through the Elks Club for being involved in the community, and someone felt that that deserved recognition, and I was actually very surprised to get that award, but it was a great moment too.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anthony.
Just had a question as far as, I'm not sure if you were aware, Department of Corrections was reporting that you have $4.05 of outstanding restitution. Has that
Really?
been paid already? Yeah, $4.
No.
To make sure
No.
I repeat that.
No, I thought everything was paid up, and that's how I got released. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been off. So that's interesting, but I can pay that.
Yeah. So sometimes the records are not always accurate. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions, Ms. Harris. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can expect to hear from my office in the next month or so with an update. And thank you for sharing your story today. You don't have to stay on the Zoom. You're welcome to go about the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Richard Stevens. I know I saw Richard in the Zoom earlier. If you're able to unmute and turn on your camera so we can see you, that would be excellent. Richard, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, am I there now?
We can hear you. I can't see you yet.
Okay, can you see me now?
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Stevens. If you wouldn't mind just walking us through a brief summary of your offense, how your sentence went, and how things have gone for you since, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
I stole a man's truck. Shouldn't have done it. Young and dumb. Got sent to the reformatory over in Green Bay. Thought everything was a big joke until the riot in 1971. I was there. Gave me a big wake-up call. Big wake-up call. After I got out, I worked several different jobs, and I left the state to get away from undue influences. Ran out of money in Utah, stayed there for the next 40 years. Accomplished a lot of things there. Stayed regularly employed. Won some awards, safe driving awards when I was a truck driver. When I worked for Ford, I was offered a job as a field representative for them. Did some work as mentoring for new mechanics getting into the field and mentoring for new drivers in the CDL program. And I feel I've done my time, and it's been over 50 years since I made the mistake, and that's where I'm at today.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Cindy.
Good morning, Mr. Stevens. Initially for this crime, you were placed on probation, and then 4 months later, you were revoked and sent to prison. What were you revoked for?
Got involved with some people, and I should have stayed away from them. And I'm trying to think of what it was about. I got involved with another stolen vehicle, and ended up paying for it. So helped me straighten my life around. It was a wake-up call.
Well, that's good, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Stevens, I don't want to trigger any bad memories, but there was a reference in your application to an event that was listed as suicide by truck.
Yeah.
What can you talk? If you'd rather not talk about it, that's fine. But I just thought that was a very strange note.
I was driving $1 million meat load into California for my employer. It was on Zonner Summit, 2003, 3:30 in the afternoon. I ran out in front of my truck.
Wow.
I've
Wow.
lived with that ever since.
Okay. Well, thank you. It sounded like a terrible event, and I just, I'm glad you got some help for that. And
I still
You know,
live with it.
it's been a long time since you sold that truck.
Yeah.
Well, if I understand it, since you went joyriding in that truck, you only drove it a couple of blocks, right?
Yes,
Okay.
pretty stupid.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Stevens? All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Stevens, and for sharing your story. You can expect to hear from us in about a month. Someone in my office will reach out to you, and you don't need to hang out on the rest of the Zoom and the hearing today. You're welcome to go enjoy the rest of your day if you'd like. Thank you again for talking with us today.
Thanks.
All right, our next applicant is Eric Ruger. Mr. Ruger, would you please unmute yourself? I see, and we have you on video.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Would you please walk us through a quick summary of your offenses, how your sentence went, and how it's gone for you since, and talk to us about why you're applying for a pardon today, please.
Sure. So when I was 19 years old, there was a couple of felonies. One was I broke into a business with the intent of stealing cash. And the other one was I took an acquaintance's debit card to get money as well. Both realistically, everything in my criminal history is related to getting money for drugs. So after I did that, I was sentenced to probation drug court. And even at that time, I was still in active addiction. I didn't really take any of it seriously. So, time and time again, getting in trouble with the drug court for not doing what I was supposed to do, staying clean, obviously the biggest thing. So at a point in time, I finally hit my rock bottom, and they sent me to rehab, Nova here in Oshkosh. And from then on out, I decided and made the decision that I wanted to get clean. Not only the want, but what happened to me it was really scary. So from that point on, I've been clean about 14 years now. And it was my last chance, if you will. And what happened is my counselor at the time, I went through the rehab, the 30 days, and then I was in the halfway house with them. And he did not agree with the sponsor that I had. I can't remember the reasons, but I was very adamant about having that sponsor because I knew he worked for me. So anyways, because of that, like I said, it was my last chance. So the counselor didn't really want to continue with me. Therefore, I was revoked and sent to prison. And I spent some time in Stanley, and then I went to the DAC program here in Oshkosh. So after that time and completing that course, I got out and essentially hit the ground running. I mean, the good thing about DAC is you learn a lot about addiction and made a lot of plans too for rehabilitation and when I get out. So when I got out, I had a plan exactly what I was going to do. I stayed with my parents for about a year, and in my plan, that was what I had planned, was to stay with my parents for a year and then get an apartment somewheres. And that was the case. When I got out, I got a job within a week or two. I can't remember exactly. I've been a go-getter ever since. Started picking parts at a company, and then that led to running the account in the warehouse for one of the accounts there. And, you know, they took notice, the higher ups and everything. And after that, went to a store in Berlin to get into the sales aspect of things. And while parts of that were quite enjoyable, it was very stressful. So from there, I decided to do something else, and I obtained my CDL. And delivered beer for a while, but so while that was a lot less stressful mentally, that was terrible physically. So for the past 5 years, I've been with a company, Nofke Lumber, here in Oshkosh, and kind of the best of both worlds. Less stress and easier on the body. I took a safe driving course at the Fox Valley Tech as well. I met a great lady, which she has 3 kids from her late husband, and we've had 2 since, so 5 kids total. Last year, I took a course and a test and obtained my Part 107 license for UAV operations, which I think next year I'm going to, or this year, that was last year, this year I'm probably going to explore some options, what I can maybe do for that moving forward, and see what kind of opportunities that brings. The reason for seeking a pardon is a couple of reasons, really. I mean, the first, and I think most obvious that comes along with that, is to kind of somewhat remove the black cloud that's above your head and the stigma that's related with that. You know, ever since getting out, I have had or gotten certain opportunities from, you know, these companies that I've been with, which has been great. There has also been plenty of places that I applied to, and, you know, you just won't hear back from them, even though you're well qualified. And some of the people that know about my history and know how I am now, you know, they tell me that it's hard for them to believe that I was once like that. You know, I'm not even near the same person. And needless to say, it's mostly because of the drug use. I'm not taking away anything that I done. Like, obviously it was me that made the choices to do that stuff, but I can safely say that if I wasn't hooked on the drugs and an active addiction at the time, my criminal history, when you look that up, none of that would be on there. So I think that's a big reason why too, is I'm not the same person. I'm just a regular person that works hard and has a family and, you know, has normal, regular likes like anybody else, you know. Another reason seeking is I would like to get back into gun hunting as well. That was a big hobby and passion of mine when I was younger. Something that drew me and my uncle close together too. he took me through the hunter safety course, and it was just a good bonding time with him. Took me hunting and everything, and trap shooting, and I really liked that stuff. And of course, you commit a felony and you can't do that anymore. So I guess long story short, that's about it. Obviously, there's only so much you can say in about 5 minutes or so, but that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Ruger. Any questions from the board? Chief Wright.
Good morning, Mr. Ruger.
Good morning.
And congratulations on completing or participated in Narcotics and Alcohol Anonymous. My question has to do with, are you doing anything periodically now, kind of to check in and to do some maintenance with your prior addiction?
Are you talking like going to meetings and stuff, or
Anything,
meetings?
going to meetings, going to counseling, periodically checking in just to, to see how things are going?
No, but that's not to say that, I don't keep myself in check, so to say. And also, my brother is still struggles to this day with addiction. So I try to help him out as much as I can as well on that front. And, that keeps everything, I don't want to say current with me, because, it's one of those deals that after so much time goes by, I leaned heavily on NA and AA when I first started getting clean. And then over time, it just becomes less of a need, to maintain being clean. So, over time, it got gradually a little bit less. And, I think that's okay though, too. I think you lean on the program when you need it, but I'm still aware of how things were and what happens when I use. That happens with a lot of people that use. Some people are worse than others, and not everything that happened to me is going to happen to, maybe someone else that uses. But I know that I can't. That, and just the fact of, living a normal, happy life. Like, I have money in my pocket now. I have a steady job. I have a great family. That's plenty of reason for me not to ever pick up and use again. And I still remember the feelings that I had and how life was using. And I mean, I can safely say that it's nothing I'll ever go back to.
Thank you.
Other questions? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Ruger, you got some pretty amazing letters from the judge and district attorney who support your application because they knew how much you'd failed in drug court.
Yep.
And how much you've succeeded since then. How does that make you feel?
I don't want to say I was like surprised, but it made me feel really good when I received the letters back from them showing their support. Because I think I do think that goes a long way. And it is kind of nice too, because they had I wasn't just another statistic, I guess you could say, with them, or another number. Judge Wolt, he was one of the judges, one of the two judges that did drug court at the time. And Eric Spar, not only was he the prosecuting attorney with my case, but he was also the DA, one of the people that in drug court as well. So, they were a part of all my shenanigans and my failures. And I think in Mr. Spar's letter, he even wrote, once he seen my application, he was kind of thinking, forget that guy. He had his chance and whatnot. And I thought it was pretty neat to see, after he read over everything and seen the changes that I've made, and then seen some of the letters from people that, he kind of changed his mind on that a little bit. Sorry, I'm kind of running along here, but it made me feel really good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruger. You can expect to hear from us in about a month. Someone from my office will reach out, and you're free to go about the rest of your day. You don't need to hang out on the Zoom with us. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much.
Our next applicant is Michael Roeder, who I believe I saw on the Zoom. Mr. Roeder, if you're able to unmute yourself and turn on your video for us.
Hello.
Excellent. We can see you and hear you. If you wouldn't mind, please just giving us a brief summary of your offenses and how your sentence went, and walk us through what you've done since then, as well as why you're seeking a pardon today.
Sure. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for their time, and I appreciate the opportunity here. So the crime which I'm seeking a pardon for is theft of a vehicle. It was a Class C felony. I committed the crime when I was 19 years old. I am now 47 years old. This was in 1995. So going back, prior to stealing the vehicle, I was a recent high school graduate and moved out of my mother's home and started hanging out with a new group of friends who were not good influences on me at all. I started using marijuana with them and things like that, and it led to, none of us really had jobs at the time, and I started writing out worthless checks for things. So then I started having court dates, and I was just feeling stressed out, I guess. And I had a job at the time at a car lot, and so I knew the ins and outs of car lots, and I went to a car lot to take a vehicle for a test drive. At that time, I had no intention of stealing the vehicle. I was with my so-called friends at the time, and we were basically, joyriding for several hours in the day. And at the end of the day, I don't know why, but I decided not to turn it in and to actually steal it. And I left the state. I drove out of state with the vehicle, and ended up getting caught about 3 days later in Indiana by a state trooper. And I ended up going to jail there for about 3 months. I was extradited back to Wisconsin, I believe for an additional 2 to 3 months, just in county jail. I was placed on probation for 5 years and ordered to pay restitution. And yeah, so I was on probation for 5 years. I did work, and I got my own place, and worked towards paying off my restitution. And yeah, so when I was on probation, I did drug and alcohol counseling and things like that. However, I was still hanging around some of the same groups of people, and still making bad decisions. And in 1998, when I was still on probation, I got a drunk driving, my first and only drunk driving, and that earned me an alternative to revocation. So I ended up going to the Atlas program in New Richmond, Wisconsin, which is it's like a 4-month boot camp program. So it's, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but they shave your head, and it's like you're in the military, and you exercise daily, and there's drug and alcohol counseling on site. And you do work crew activities. Like in the winter, we shoveled snow in the neighborhood for people that couldn't get out and shovel snow. We cut down weeds and things like that in the ditches, like a work crew detail, basically. So anyway, after that, I came back, I completed the program. I got my own place. I started working again full-time in a factory. And I worked there for a number of years, a window and door factory, and ended up meeting my future wife there, and completed the probation. And my wife was in college at the time and out of state, and I decided to move with her out of state to her town that she was attending college, and I've been with her ever since. I have not ever, I kind of dropped all my old friends that I, had bad influences with, and we've been married for 17 years. We own a home. We have 2 beautiful daughters that are kind of my life. They're 8 and 11. I have not been any trouble since getting off of probation. I did have 1 speeding ticket since then. I think it was in 2008, I believe. But other than that, no interaction with law enforcement of any kind. Just a lot of bad decisions when I was younger, and I regret it every day. I did go back to school for a time too, and earned my associate's degree with MATC. I have an associate's degree in applied science and radiography. So I did complete that program, and I did get licensed by the state of Wisconsin. That I've been having a hard time trying to find a job in that field. And I do believe it is because of my record. I've had some that never even respond to me after I submit my application, because I'm truthful on my application about my felony. And it's just, it's been a really hard time trying to find employment in that field. I've had a few interviews, and it seemed like I was going to get the job, but after criminal background checks and things, I get told no. I've even tried to volunteer with hospitals, and I have gotten rejection letters saying I cannot volunteer due to my record. And I think I enclosed copies of that as well. I just want you guys to know I'm a changed person, and I can't believe I did those crimes years ago. I wish I hadn't done them years ago. And, that's pretty much it. I'm a changed person, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Mr. Roeder. I appreciate you sharing your story. Questions from the board? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. You'll hear from our office in about the next month or so. We'll keep you updated. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out, and you do not need to hang out on the Zoom for the rest of the day. Hope you are able to enjoy the rest of your Friday, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, our last applicant in this first morning session is Dale Watson. I believe I saw Mr. Watson. All right, looks like you're unmuted, Mr. Watson, and now I can see you.
Hi,
Excellent.
how you doing?
Thank you. If you're able to just walk us through a brief summary of your offenses, how your sentence went, the community involvement or employment you've had since then, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay, I was 17 years old. Me and a few other friends, we burglarized a shed, stole a golf cart out of it, took it for a joyride, parked it, returned it, got in trouble, ended up getting 4 years probation, 120 days in jail. And the victim was my now father-in-law, who had been a really good friend to me. And ever since that, I've now gotten in trouble. I've raised 3 kids with his daughter, held a job for 17 years, switched jobs. Now I work for the federal government, and I paid all my restitution. I paid off all the fines, and I'm seeking a pardon so I can go deer hunting with them.
Excellent, thank you. Questions for Mr. Watson? Reverend Hancock?
Mr. Watson, who's there with you?
My attorney, Jeff Rolte.
Okay, and let me see if I get this right. You were 17 years old.
That's
You went
correct.
joyriding in a golf cart and got a felony conviction for that.
Yep, we stole it out of a shed. We did a little bit of damage to it, but we did return it back.
So how, you may not know this, but that seems not to justify a felony.
Yeah, it was theft of movable property. So it was a Class C felony I got charged with.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Watson? All right, none from me. So thank you so much for joining us and speaking with us today, Mr. Watson. You can expect to hear from us in about a month. And if you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out to my office. And you're free to go about the rest of your day. You don't need to hang out on the Zoom. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, bye.
I'll unmute it now.
All right, so that was our last applicant for this first morning session. We are a little ahead of schedule, so we will take a break to keep compliant with our open meetings rules. We will reconvene at 10. I'll ask board members to join us again about 9:59, just so that we can get going right on time. Thank you. Good morning. We're just going to wait another minute for our board members to rejoin us and for folks to be let in from the waiting room here. All right, we are right at 10 o'clock. So as soon as I see all of our board members back on video here, we will get started. Just waiting on Reverend Mitvicker. There we go. All right, thank you everybody for your prompt return. The coffee is so essential. I hear you. Welcome everybody. We'll pick back up. Applicants who have joined us, I'm Mel Barnes. I'm the governor's chief legal counsel. The folks you see on video are members of his pardon advisory board. We are going to get started with our second set of applicants for this morning. I'm going to ask all of you to stay on mute and not have your video turned on until it is your turn. We'll go in the order listed in the publicly posted agenda. And you will each have about 5 minutes to share your story and answer questions from the board members. We'll ask you to start by providing a brief summary of the offense you're seeking a pardon for, how your sentence went, what you've done since the completion of your sentence, and tell us about why you're seeking a pardon today. Once you have a chance to speak with us on this Zoom, you can expect to hear from my office in about a month. It takes a majority vote of board members present to advance your application to the governor. But again, you can expect to hear from us either way in about a month. So with that, we'll get started with our first applicant, who is Kenneth Spurl. Mr. Spurl, are you on the Zoom with us? All right. I see.
I'm here.
There we go. All right. I can hear you. I can't see you yet. Are you able to turn on your video?
I don't know how to turn my video on. Okay.
Let me see if I can send you a press. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Mr. Spurl, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. All right. Please go ahead and get started just walking us through your offense, your sentence, what you've done since, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Start with I was 17 years old. I was in school, and if you look at my record, I've always been like in the IAP class and stuff like that. Long story short, I got involved doing something I had no business doing. I had no knowledge of what was going on. What was going on in particular as far as the police stopping us. I got caught with 5 rocks when I was 17. And I left the drugs alone, but I was still smoking weed. I got caught with 7 grams of weed 4 years later. They charged me with second subsequent offense. And that means the time doubled. I got charged for a felony for it. Here it is, 22 years later. I have full custody of my grandson, and he was his mom OD'd in Green Bay in Brown County, so they gave me custody of him 5 years ago. Since then, I had him. So I tried to obtain employment in places, and you know the criteria of having a felony didn't go with certain criteria. So I started with a temp service, and I worked hard. I'm fully, and I have a full. I work for Sellers. This is my job. I worked 480 hours. I worked hard. They hired me through the company. I have a grandson, and I just want to create some avenues and try to open business. So, you know, the betterment of my family, because that's my legacy. And I have to create him a childhood. Long story short. And the first case was in 92nd. The second one was in 2001. But since then, I haven't had any infractions with the law. I don't think I had a speeding ticket. And if I did, I paid it.
Thank you, Mr. Sproul. Do you have questions from the board?
No,
Cindy? Oh, sorry, questions from the board.
I'm sorry.
We've got one from Cindy.
Good morning, Mr. Sproul.
Good morning.
Cindy, how are you today?
I'm okay, Miss Cindy.
Good.
Put my earbud in. Okay.
Part of the
Hello?
application process encourages letters of support for the applicants to submit letters of support, and you didn't submit any, and I'm wondering why.
I didn't know that. I had no idea that I was supposed to have letters of support. I didn't.
Well, it's not required, but it's encouraged. It's part of the application process.
I'm sorry, Miss Cindy. I really didn't know that.
No, Nina, I just wondered if it was an oversight or if there was some particular reason. Just curious about it. That's all.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Other questions from board members? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Sproul, the district attorney's office in Milwaukee supports your application. How does that make you feel?
It make me feel good. Like I have redemption. I mean, like, that I got a second chance, even at, not being, being a felon stop you from doing things, but I still haven't let it hold me back from doing anything like gainful employment and staying out of trouble and so I feel good about that just in whole in itself, that somebody supports me being able to get a pardon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions? Just one for me, Mr. Sproul. I see that it looks like there were a couple other encounters with law enforcement in like 2004, 2007 that didn't lead to charges. But could you just tell me kind of what was going on in your life then and what's different now?
In 2007, I was in a car with somebody that was in tour with somebody. I didn't have any idea. It was some girl stuff. I didn't have no knowledge of it. I went to preliminary. They let me go. That had nothing to do with me. I don't know what the 2004 is. I don't remember getting in trouble. Oh, when we got pulled over in the car, I was working 69 hours a week then. My probation officer, I was on probation. He knew that I had no knowledge of what was going on. Whatever the investigation was with the guys who got into the trouble, the police themselves knew I had nothing to do with it. I was just on probation. I didn't have a car. I was getting a ride to get something to wear. It was for a birthday party or something like that. Wrong place, wrong time. Since then, you can see I ain't been in the car with anyone.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Sproul. Yes, I see that.
I also have my CDL license. Before this job, I was driving dump trucks, loading asphalt loaders. I have my commercial right here. So I've been just keeping my nose clean, working hard, and that's how I stay out of trouble.
Excellent. Looks good. Any other questions from the board? All right, with that then, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sproul, and chatting with us today. Like I said, you can expect to hear from my office in about a month.
Okay.
And we thank you for your time today.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Okay.
All right, our next applicant is Matthew Porter. Mr. Porter, are you on the Zoom? I believe I saw your square. There we go. And if you're able to unmute, we'll just ask you to start with a brief summary of your offenses and how your sentence went, and what you've done since the end of your sentence and why you're seeking a pardon today.
I was 18. I was riding my four-wheeler on the road, which wasn't legal at the time. And I ended up meeting a police officer. And then I decided to try and outrun the cop on the ATV, which was a big mistake on my part. I was young and I didn't realize it would affect my life. And then since then, I started a business with my dad doing construction shortly after the incident. Until August of last year, I just recently started working at Lion Energy power plant up in Portage. The reason I would seeking a pardon is I was young. I made a mistake, which I've learned from my mistake, as I have not been in trouble since, and I have no intention of getting in any more trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Questions from the pardon board members? Chief Ray, saw your hand first.
Mr. Porter, what do you do at Alliant Energy?
I am a equipment operator. And like if something breaks or anything like that, we try and assess the situation and fix it if we can. And if we can't fix it, it's above our qualifications, then we have maintenance come do it.
Okay, thank you.
And Cindy, you look like you had a question.
Thank you. Two questions. I don't want to gloss over the crime because, eluding is a really serious offense, and you were traveling at a high rate of speed. You had a passenger. You went through stop signs. I mean, you could have caused serious injury to not only yourself, but to others, and including the law enforcement officer who's engaged in the chase. So what was your thought process at that time, including having a passenger on that ATV with you?
I really didn't think at the moment, but then as we kept going, I'm like, this was a mistake. I shouldn't have even done this.
Okay. My second question, you heard me ask the previous applicant, but you also did not submit any letters of support, and I'm curious as to why not.
I must have overlooked it. I didn't see that part. I must have just overlooked it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Reverend Hancock.
Matthew, the Grant County DA supports your application. How does that make you feel?
That makes me feel pretty good that they realize that I have learned from my mistake and they're willing to give me a shot.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Porter? All right. Mr. Porter, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, you can expect to hear from our office in about a month. So we thank you for your patience and thank you for taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you for hearing me.
Of course. And you don't need to hang out on the Zoom. You're welcome to go about the rest of your day. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Wayne Shalander is our next applicant. And let's see, I see him in the Zoom. Mr. Shalander, are you able to hear us?
Yes.
Great. It looks like we just have you by phone, so that's fine.
Yes. Yes.
We can go ahead and
all I
get.
got is the phone here, so.
Oh, no problem. So we'll just ask you to spend a couple of brief minutes giving us a summary of your offense, how your sentence went, what you've done since then, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay. I got my felony between 30 and 40 years ago, and I was gonna try earlier, but the lawyers I was talking with down in Baldwin, at the time there was a different governor in there, and they told me that they'd take my $2,500, but the pardon would never go through because the governor at that time wasn't approving pardons. And I haven't been arrested or anything since. And I like to go hunting with my grandkids. And that's about it, I guess.
Thank you. Do we have questions from our board members for Mr. Shalander?
Not really, unless they got something to ask me.
I'm phrasing this poorly. Yes. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Shalander? Reverend Hancock, I see you have one.
Mr. Shalander, the Polk County DA supports your application. How does that make you feel?
Real good.
Okay.
Makes me feel wonderful.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions for our applicant? All right, Mr. Schlander, that's all the questions we have for you. Thank you very much for joining us today. As I mentioned, you can expect to hear from my office in about a month. And if you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. You're free to go about the rest of your day. You don't need to hang out on the Zoom with us. And thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Okay, thank you for talking to me.
Of course. Our next
You have a good
applicant is
day now.
Diane. Thank you as well. Our next applicant is Diane Wendell. Ms. Wendell, I see you on my screen. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to walk us through a summary of your offenses that you're seeking pardon for today, how your sentence went, what you've done since then, and why you're seeking a pardon.
Okay. Essentially, I wrote multiple worthless checks, Dane County, Dodge County, Fond du Lac County. Sentenced to prison for 2 years. Was in Waupun Correctional for Burke. Work release, was released, was revoked. Sentenced back for 4 years on the felony. When I was at TCI, I completed the dental lab training. I also completed my serve safe and cognitive behavior. I went back to prison in March of 2008. I was actually in the 24-hour division where they decide your classification when I got a phone call that I lost my father. We are a very close-knit family of 5 girls, and that was very hard on me, knowing that I could not go to the funeral or see my family. I was then sent to Ellsworth, where I was an inmate driver and worked at Burger King full-time for the rest of my sentence. It changed my perspective when I lost my father, and to see what it did to me and my family, and also everyone in the community. I essentially was self-centered, low self-esteem, and materialistic to write these bad checks. I thought that buying my fiance's love after our children were born, that it would make him stay with me. And in fact, I'm the one that was ruining everything. My sons are now 23 and 21. My middle child is full scholarship to Marquette Law and right out of the Marines. I have since been active in the community trying to give back and learn what I did and go through counseling. It is hard for me to ask for a pardon today, as I shouldn't have never have taken the life path. I did. I got married after I got out, had another son. We bought a house with my husband and mother and father-in-law. I then took care of my mother and father-in-law, and my mother, who had Alzheimer's, was with them at the house when they passed. I have maintained full-time employment, dental lab to insurance, and mortgage companies as a field claim rep. I am now going to school for forensic science, and I would like to get the pardon today to pursue my forensic science with odontology degree, and I became interested in that because of the dental lab at TCI. Long story. I think I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Wendell. Questions from our pardon board members for Ms. Wendell? Cindy.
So Ms. Wendell, a lot of the applicants we see committed one crime and then they learned from that and they went on to live a crime-free life, but you actually continued to engage. So in 2007, you had a misdemeanor theft, was that worthless checks again?
It was classified as a theft by false representation
Okay,
because the driver's license was written wrong on the check.
what does that mean? You,
When they went to authorize the check, their driver's license was written wrong, so it wouldn't come up under mine.
okay, so that was done purposely to,
Honestly, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I probably did at that point. Like I said, I was in materialistic and thought I needed to buy love and have learned that is not the case.
okay. And then 7 years later, 2014, another misdemeanor, worthless checks.
That
And,
was a civil fine. That was just a civil misdemeanor. Well, I don't know if they called it misdemeanor or a civil fine, but it was paid right away before it went to the charges. So
Well,
when
that
it
may
got
be,
to
but what's concerning is that you continue to engage in that conduct, whether you paid a fine or it was, I mean, it's the conduct that concerns. the
Yes,
board,
and
right?
that is correct. I mean, that is correct. And that was not done on purpose. It was a check that did not clear our account. And the minute I found out it didn't clear, I went and took care of it.
Okay.
That was not a purposely done adventure.
Okay. In 2023, there's a UC benefit warrant that's listed. Were you collecting unemployment compensation? Is there some issue?
There is, and we're still working with that with my lawyer and with the bankruptcy lawyer as to why unemployment is saying I did not qualify for the benefits during the pandemic when I was working the 28 hours and not the full 40. So we're working with them on that. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Wendell? All right, seeing none. Ms. Wendell, thank you very much for sharing your story with us today and taking the time to chat. You can expect to hear from my office in about a month. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. And you're free to enjoy the rest of your day. You do not need to hang out on the Zoom with us.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Our next applicant is Michael Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, there you are. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. We're going to ask you to spend just a couple of minutes giving us a brief summary of the offense you're seeking a pardon for, how your sentence went, how things have gone since then, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm 42 now, and the things that I'm looking for a pardon on were like 20 years ago. So for me, the late 90s, adolescent years were like pretty not great. So got into some trouble, was like fighting and doing stuff like that a lot. And the felonies that I was engaged in was one for a burglary and one for a robbery. So along with somebody else, we had robbed a gas station, and along with somebody else, we had robbed a house. So that was what we did. And after that happened, I was like 19, 20 and stuff. And then I moved down to Chicago, wasn't driving. And then one day I got picked up. So apparently things had come back. So got picked up, went to jail. I ultimately was sentenced to a year in Huber, and then 6 years stayed. And then I didn't have any incidents during probation, or ever since for that matter. So probation went fine. I did my 1 year in Huber. It was a really great year. I got a new job. My boss, looked out for me. So I got into sales, and then I got into management at a retail place, and everything went really good since then. So started reading books, started getting good at sales. I'm a sales manager now for a home improvement company. So I got a good job. I help other people have good jobs. I belong to a meditation group, and I'm on the board for another meditation group. And, you know, so I got a family, married for, I think, 15 years. I got 3 kids, got 2 grandbabies. And, you know, like, got a pretty good thing going. I got a good job. I got a kid who's like a good swimmer, who's, you know, got his stuff together along with all my other kids, and like all around everything's going pretty good. I think I could probably get promoted at work if I had a pardon. You know, a felony has kept me from getting lots of jobs over the years, but I've been here for 10 years. And, you know, if I had that pardon, it would go a long way towards maybe getting promoted. Probably without it, it's probably an automatic no-go. And if I do get it, then I can, like, you know, really make a thing out of that. And, you know, I thought maybe I'll be able to figure out a way to like be a guest speaker for like kids or something, maybe at some schools, and tell them not to be a screw up. So seems fun if I could get that going. So like with a felony, everything is like, you know, I got to keep it a secret. I never talk about it. It's like the most embarrassing thing. It's been 20 years. Nobody who I even know now would ever know it, would ever suspect it, would even ever believe it. But I would still like not get promoted. But if I had it, I would like turn that into a huge benefit and probably be able to do something with it. And that's where I'm at. So.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. I have just a question before I turn over to the board. In the robbery that you mentioned, there was a gun involved, and I know that you disclosed some of the details about that in your application. Would you just tell us a little bit about your use of a gun in that crime?
Well, yeah, so like had never really like used one before. So, you know, like watching movies and stuff is like kind of where you get the idea. So went in and like had like no idea that it was gonna like go down that way. But it was discharged, and it was like so scary, like not discharged on purpose, like discharged because like it's scary for everybody. And then like, you know, that happened, it went bad. So like, you know, I apologized and got the hell out of there. And it was horrible. Like, I don't even know what to say about it. It was just really horrible for everybody involved, including me. And you know, like everybody. So.
Thank you. Questions from the other board members for Mr. Wilkins? Cindy.
Morning, Mr. Wilkins. I was really impressed in your application with your description of the impact on the victim and the victim empathy you showed. And, you know, I just thought that was really important and wanted to acknowledge that. So I found it interesting that the court ordered you to write a letter of apology to the victim within 30 days, and then again a year later. Do you remember writing those letters?
Not really.
No. Okay.
But,
fair enough. It was a long time ago. I was just curious.
But that's nice that they had me write them, and then hopefully I did write them, and hopefully they like meant something. You know, it was really bad. So, you know, like I don't even know how it ended up there, but like it did. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Other board members have questions for Mr. Wilkins. All right. I think we are all set then, Mr. Wilkins. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Like I said, you can expect to hear from the office in about a month, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Can I ask one more question? I should have asked it earlier. I heard lots of other people saying, man, I wish I saw that guy. You know, Jerry was saying that lots of times, like the district attorney or whoever is signing off on it, did whoever's involved in mind, the judge or the DA, did they like think that's a good idea, or does a victim get contacted? Did anybody say like, yeah, it's okay, we're glad, we support it, or?
So we do contact, or have you contact as part of the application process, the judge and the district attorney. It looks like we did not receive a response from either of them in your case, or from the victim. That's not necessarily unusual, but we did not hear back from those folks.
Okay, well, thank you for hearing me. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, bye.
All right, our next applicant is Hasina Muda. And I believe I saw her on the Zoom earlier. Ms. Muhammad, are you on the Zoom?
Yes,
There
I'm
we
here.
go.
How are you guys doing?
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. So we'll just have you start by briefly walking us through the crime that you're seeking a pardon for, your sentence, how it went, how things have gone for you since then, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay. Nice to meet you guys. Sorry it's under these circumstances. Thank you for having me as well. I was convicted of felon in possession of a firearm, party to a crime. What happened is I essentially had a weapon, got a weapon for a person that wasn't supposed to have it. It was a bad, very bad relationship that I had with my children's father. I did something that was very silly and potentially dangerous. I was sentenced to 18 months probation, 6 months electronic monitoring. Since the probation and since everything happened, I was working as a supervisor at Luther Manor. It's a nursing home in the dietary. I still work that job after the sentence. Since then, I've held several different jobs. They were basically all kind of like entry level. Anything from McDonald's to a driver, a cook at a daycare. Um, I've also went to school. Um, I wanted a degree. I started off wanting a degree in culinary arts. Um, I wasn't that good at it. Um, I wasn't really focused enough. Believe it or not, culinary arts is very, very hard and competitive, but I wasn't focused enough. So I ended up changing my major because I had a lot of people that I was going to school with say that I would be better in human services. And that was maybe because of, I guess, maybe my personality and me sharing things that I've been through and just like trying not to let things hold me back. Um, and um, what else? I'm seeking the pardon today is because like with me going throughout school and I was in a domestically abusive relationship. I spent time at the Sojourner Truth House, and in my time at the Sojourner Truth House, I learned a lot as well. In there, we had counseling. I had therapy for myself also, like independently. Therapy for years, 2 years. Um, just being able to forgive myself and work through things that I needed to work through that I would never never get myself into a situation like I did and never keep putting myself through things. And I have daughters and even now they're teenagers, of course. I have a 18-year-old son as well. Just learning things that there's issues here that I can help with and bringing a unique skill set because of things that I've been through to relate to people in our community, to help people, and that's what ultimately I would like to do. I think that I need to be used to help people, and getting a pardon would help me, you know, not have that on my record. So when I go to these places, like, you know, finish my degree for human services, and I go to these places, I'm not automatically denied because of having a felony on my.
Thank you, Ms. Muhammad. Do we have questions from our board members for this applicant? All right. Oh, Reverend Hancock.
The the judge in Milwaukee County and the DA in Milwaukee County both support your application. How does that make you feel?
Oh, I feel extremely blessed and extremely proud that they can see me for me and not just see the seriousness of the crime, which I know it is. You know what I mean? But I'm happy that they can see that, you know, I have an opportunity to, I have potential and opportunity to do better and, be better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Muhammad? All right. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story with us. As I mentioned a couple other times, you can expect to hear from our office in the next month or so, and you don't need to hang out on the Zoom with us. You're welcome to go about the rest of your day. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Tyrone Cross. Mr. Cross, are you on the Zoom with us? I think Mr. Cross was having some tech issues earlier, so I'm not sure if those have been sorted out. It looks like staff says that Mr. Cross is on as a phone number. Mr. Cross, can you hear me? All right, well, I'll have someone from my office reach out and see if we can get the IT issues sorted out for Mr. Cross. And in the meantime, we'll move on to our next applicant, which is David Stokes. Mr. Stokes. Excellent, I can see you.
Can
Okay.
you guys?
Now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Stokes, thanks for joining us. We're just going to ask you to walk us briefly through the crime that you're seeking a pardon for, your sentence, how it went for you, how things have gone in your life since then, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for the opportunity for allowing me even to be a part of this pardon. That's a blessing in itself. So to get into it, about 14, 15 years ago, I was convicted of possession of marijuana. The day of in question, I was at a residence, a search warrant was issued. Marijuana was found. I took full ownership of the marijuana. To this day, I still do. It's my responsibility, no one else's. At that time in my life, I was ignorant, naive, you could say impressionable, thinking there was a quicker way to make it in life. But I soon found out that there was no truth to that. I was given 2.5 years probation. Part of that probation, I was ordered to serve 4 months of work release, Hubert. And just by doing Hubert, I truly found out that this wasn't a lifestyle for me. So actually about a month after being released from Hubert, became baptized. I've been a member of Tabernacle Baptist Church ever since then, up until this day. I worked for a cleaning company during my time in Hubert, and I was actually given the opportunity to take over the franchise after my release. So therefore, from there, I maintained full-time employment. Upon me taking over the cleaning company, I obtained an associate's degree in computer technology, but unfortunately, in the tech field, the felony, hindered me from obtaining opportunities. So therefore, I switched my lane into looking into business management. I took a few courses. I went into real estate, but also, unfortunately, at that time, a felon was unable to obtain a real estate broker's license. So I was still, my passion was inside of the real estate. So I actually got in on the other side of rehabbing and renovating homes. I partnered with a few local companies now. We focus on, our main focus is the inner city, making homes affordable for lower income families and single mothers, or you want to say lower income families, to where about 2 months ago, I was actually nominated to be on the board of the Inner City Redevelopment Commission, who partners with Ogden Real Estate Company, where they develop units or homes for the lower income families. And right now we're in the works of doing a 50 to 100 unit development in the North Division area. So we're still in the works of that. I don't want to jinx that. But since then, I've volunteered at my church. I speak to the young men that get in trouble or I see taking a turn like me. Volunteer at Salvation Army for the holidays, work with small community organizations doing book bag giveaways. We do feed the homeless around the holidays, food drives, toy drives, and all up until the end, I become married, 4 beautiful children. And within that time, I've never been in trouble since, maybe a speeding ticket here and there, but other than that, no infractions with the law whatsoever. Once again, while still maintaining full-time employment, right now, I'm actually been at Aurora Advanced Hair Care for about 8 years now. So that's where the big push for the pardon comes in, because I miss numerous opportunities in advancing in my career because unfortunately some positions require federal and government licensing, as well as a nursing license that I tried to obtain, but unfortunately in the state of Wisconsin, I feel I cannot receive those licenses. And also a part of that, really another main push is my wife. I'm going to definitely help her achieve her dreams of opening a facility for elderly and mentally ill individuals. But with me co-partnering with that, we wouldn't be able to obtain some certain funding from the government as well as state because of my felony conviction. Once again, I take full responsibility for what I did. I knew what I was doing, it was wrong, but I tried to be, one of the slick guys, because back then, we thought that was the fastest way to make it in life instead of just working hard for it. With now, I truly see that there is no fast way to success. But the real main reason is also, from my community and with me speaking with the young men, gentlemen, I want to show that, no matter what you're going through life, everyone should be offered a second chance, but try to make the best chance out of your first chance. So that way you won't need a second chance, and that's basically the main reason for everything. Like I said, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity, for even allowing me to be here, to you guys even hear me out. And once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Are there any questions for my fellow board members for Mr. Stokes? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Stokes, the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office supports your application. How does that make you feel?
Man, I'm elated. It's a blessing. I just don't know. I thank you again. Many times I can say thank you, thank you, thank you. Man, thank you. I'm elated, man. You just don't know. If I knew guys better, I might cry on her, but thanks. Man, thank you for everything.
Well, just to be clear, it's not us, it's the DA's office.
Okay. Thank you.
Board members, do you have any other questions for Mr. Stokes? All right, seeing none, Mr. Stokes, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. As I mentioned before, you can expect to hear from my office in the next month or so. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. And you are welcome to enjoy the rest of your day. You do not need to hang out on the Zoom. Thank you again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you again.
All right, and Mr. Cross, I believe, is now connected by phone. So Mr. Cross, if you can hear us, we are ready to hear from you now.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you for joining us. We're going to ask you to just give us a very brief summary of the offense you're seeking a pardon for, your sentence, how it went, what you've done since, and your reasons for seeking a pardon.
Okay. First off, I want to thank you for allowing me to attend this governor's pardon conference. I want to start with, I was 18 years old. It was 1986. I and my friends were just walking on the east side of Madison, and we seen a home that looked unoccupied. And one of the friends we was with, a lady friend, she told us that she knew the people that lived in the house, and they were gone for the weekend. I don't know why what came to our mind. We just said, let's go in. and it was the most stupidest move we ever could have made. And we broke into the house and we stole some electronic things and some jewelry. And it was all spontaneous. We wasn't even thinking. After a while, the police was on our case. I was told by my mother, the female friend's mother, she told her mother what we did. And her mother went back and told my mother and complained about it because she was friends with the family we broke in the house of. My mother advised me, she begged me to turn myself in. And I did so. And I took all the blame, full blame for the burglary. After I was convicted of burglary, I was given 2 years probation. While I was on probation, I wasn't very good with supervision. I got in some more trouble. I ended up had a retail theft, and then I had a possession of with no intent. It was marijuana and crack cocaine. From there, I was given extended probation. I eventually messed that up as well. I want to go back for I jumped a little bit too far. I had a retail while I was on probation the first time. I did prison time because I was revoked. Then when I got out, I was on parole. I got a second charge of possession with no intent, and that was in 92. Then I had another possession in 94 under parole with no intent. And then in 99, I had called a domestic situation. I was married by that time, but it was a domestic charge I was given in 99. And my parole was finally revoked. And I ended up doing time in Dane County Jail. It's been so many years, me making mistakes and not thinking things out. I never had a father figure in my life during my younger years. I can't blame it all on not having a father figure. I should have took some responsibility on my own to make better decisions. But over the years, I had to learn how to be a man. And by the time I was in my 30s, I figured it out. And I have a daughter now that's she's in her early 30s. I did work in healthcare for over 15 years. I have 4 grandchildren. I'm a grandfather. I'm disabled now due to my. I was born with glaucoma. It has caused a lot of problems when it comes to me attaining employment. But I also have a problem with breathing. I have bronchitis real bad. But still and yet, I want to get this pardon because I want to gain my humanity back. And there's things I want to do in my life. I might want to go back to school and become a pharmacist. I can't do that with these felonies I have. And I haven't seen a jail cell in over 20 some years. I feel that I've had grown a lot over the years. I've become wise and I've become more mature. And I want to be given a second chance in life to just, live my life and go on with my life. And I just want to say that I'm thankful that I'm being given a chance to do that right now with this conference hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. We'll just take any questions from the board. Reverend Hancock, I saw you unmute. Do you have a question?
Mr. Cross, the judge in Dane County supports your application. How does that make you feel?
Oh man, this makes me realize that I've come a long way, and I feel someone has some confidence in me, and I'm very appreciative that judge has confidence and they see a lot of me, that I'm trying to better myself in life.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Cross? Mr. Cross, I just want to briefly touch on something you mentioned. You mentioned these couple of domestic abuse related convictions in the late 90s. Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on there and what, if anything, is different now?
By that time, like I said, in the 30s, I had figured it out about being mature and staying out of trouble. My wife, I love her to death at the time. She was my wife. We're divorced now. She was a drug addict. And I couldn't say, me, myself, during my younger years, I was a drug addict. But I grew out of that. And just trying to keep the marriage together with a person that's going in and out, forgery charges, writing bad checks and stealing money out of my bank account, our joint bank account. It was hard. And I got upset one day because she disappeared for 3 days. And I grabbed her and I shook her up. I didn't hit her, but I shook her up. It's still yet. I guess I should have controlled my emotions. And the police was called on me. And then by me being on the probation at the time, one thing led to another. I ended up with the domestic charge.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Cross? All right, Mr. Cross, no questions from the rest of the board. So thank you very much for joining us and sharing your story today. I've mentioned this to a couple other applicants, but you can expect to hear from our office in about a month. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. But you don't need to hang out with us on the Zoom for the rest of the day, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes our applicants for this morning session. So at this time, the board will be moving into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes, section 1985, 1 sub A, sub D, and F, for the purposes of deliberations concerning cases before the board, for considering specific applications, and for considering financial, medical, social, and personal histories of specific persons. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Move the motion.
I have a motion from Chief Ray. I have a second from Cindy. And any opposed? Hearing none, we will go into closed session at this time, and I will pause the live stream. We will be back at 1 o'clock this afternoon for consideration of additional applicants. Good morning, everybody. As you're entering, we're just going to give it another moment to get everybody in from our Zoom waiting room. All right, I think we have most folks in from the waiting room. We are live, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mel Barnes. I'm Chief Legal Counsel in the Office of Governor Evers. We're going to get started in the afternoon session of the March meeting of the Governor's Pardon Advisory Board. With me today are other board members. We have Anthony Cooper Sr., who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Reentry Services at Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development. Mr. Cooper received a pardon from Governor Evers in 2021. We have Reverend Jerry Hancock, who is the Director of the Prison Ministry Project and previously served as a public defender, deputy district attorney, and an administrator for the Department of Justice's Division of Law Enforcement Services. We have Reverend John McVicker, who is the founding pastor of Christ the King Baptist Church in Milwaukee. He also serves as a board chairman for King's Academy Christian School and is an associate chaplain for the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department. We have board member Cindy O'Donnell, who served as deputy secretary of the Department of Corrections under Governors Thompson, McCallum, and Doyle. She served as a division administrator under Attorneys General Lautenschlager and Van Hollen as well. And finally, we have former Madison Police Chief Noble Ray, who served the Madison Police Department for almost 28 years, including as Chief of Police from 2004 to 2013. Noble Ray also led the U.S. Department of Justice's Policing Practices and Accountability Initiative, and currently provides racial bias training for law enforcement agencies around the nation and the world. Those are your board members today. We will be on video throughout the process. We will ask our applicants to mute themselves and turn off their video when they are not speaking. That allows us as board members to focus on the applicant that's before us at the time and makes our Zoom screens work a little bit better. If you do run into any technology difficulties with Zoom, getting your audio and video to work, don't worry, someone in my office will reach out to you and troubleshoot any issues. And if we need to come back to you after calling your name, don't worry, we'll just come right back to you. So we will go through applicants in the order that they're listed in the open meetings notice, and each applicant will have about 5 minutes to go through and answer the questions that you were sent in advance, providing a brief summary of the offenses you're seeking a pardon for, how your sentence went, what you've done since the completion of your sentence, including your involvement in the community and employment, and a brief statement about why you're seeking a pardon today. The board may or may not ask you questions about your application. Don't read too much into it one way or another. Sometimes all of our questions are answered based on your written materials and your statement, and sometimes there are things that we want a little bit more information about. So applicants, once you're done speaking with the board and answering questions, you're welcome to sign off. You don't have to hang out in the Zoom all day. And once everyone has spoken with the board will go into closed session to decide whether or not to recommend your application to the governor. You need a majority support of board members present in order to advance your application to the governor. And then the governor will decide whether to grant your pardon or reject your application. And either way, you'll hear from someone in my office in about a month. So we thank you for your continued patience, recognizing that many of you have applied and have had applications pending for quite a while at this point. But you can expect to hear from us in about a month. And as always, if you have questions in the meantime, you're welcome to reach out to my office. With that, we'll go ahead and get started with our first applicant this afternoon, which is Stephen Potter. Mr. Potter, we will have you, I see you on video, we'll have you on mute. And if you can briefly walk us through the crimes for which you're seeking a pardon, how your sentence went, what you've done since then, and your reasons for seeking a pardon today.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, board members, and good afternoon. Thank you for this time and this opportunity today. Let me jump right into it. I've always taken full responsibility for this crime, and I always will. I did it. I sold the drugs, and I fully deserved the conviction and the punishment that followed. This all occurred in 1998 when I was convicted of selling a controlled substance, marijuana. I was sentenced to 90 days in the Milwaukee County Jail with work and school privileges, release privileges, and I was also sentenced to 2 years of probation. I completed all of those sentences, and paid all of the related fines. At the time, my excuse for this was that I wanted to be the new cool guy on campus. Later in life, however, I would come to painfully understand that this conviction was ultimately just the first major sign of my challenges with substance abuse and addiction. To be very clear about it, I am an addict. I am an alcoholic. That said, today I am clean. Today I am sober. In fact, I've been clean and sober now for 8 years. In the time between my conviction and today, my my addictions have dragged me and my family through some very difficult times, as you can imagine. But after hitting rock bottom those 8 years ago, I have really turned things around. And I did so because I could see how my problems were increasingly and drastically impacting my son's life. I knew that if I would continue to get drunk and get high, that I would end the relationship that I had with him. And that's not something that I could allow to happen. And it's not something I did let happen. So after realizing that, I dove headfirst into recovery. In my many years of sobriety now, I've been involved in local recovery communities and have created and led meeting groups. I've served on these groups' governing boards. I've explained my experience and offered my strength and hope to many others who struggle with similar problems. And most importantly, I have and currently do sponsor other young men who need help and guidance on their road to recovery and sobriety. In all, by the time I finally found recovery, I had spent more than half of my life in the stranglehold of drugs and alcohol. I'm committed today to working very hard every single day to never return to that painful, very destructive path that would ultimately lead to certain death for me. I have no doubt about that. Over the recent years, thanks to my sobriety, I've made leaps and bounds professionally. I've earned a master's degree and I'm employed in a job that I love today, where I'm able to help others and mentor other young people entering the field of journalism. I've also been active in service to my community outside of recovery. I've been part of teams that have created nonprofit groups based on expanding live music options for underserved communities. I've been active as a volunteer in my son's schooling and on local planning councils. I've also been one of the founders of a scholarship named for my high school principal. I've done a lot and I believe I can do a lot more. But without a pardon, my advancement and growth and my ability to help others will be limited. There are jobs with government agencies that I would be rejected from without a pardon. And as many of you know, without a pardon, I could not serve in elected office if I wanted to do that down the road. Furthermore, travel to other countries without a pardon would be severely hindered. I believe that I would need a pardon to travel to places like Canada or the United Kingdom. And that is something that's possible for work. So receiving a pardon factors into my professional abilities and opportunities there as well. So it's for those reasons that I think I've proven through my hard work, my self-improvement, my interest in helping others, that I believe I'm, maybe strong consideration for a pardon from this group. I think that's about it. I'm happy to expand on this or answer any other questions. And thank you again for your time and this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. I just have one question for you before I turn it over to the rest of the board. I see this 2014 arrest where you have a deferred prosecution. Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on in your life there and any changes you've made since then?
Yeah, that was the arrest that was the last time I took a drink or a drug. What I was arrested for is, disorderly conduct. I was intoxicated. I was acting foolish and I was upset. As you had stated, it was, sent to deferred prosecution. I did complete that completely. That included going to some rehab counseling and substance abuse counseling, mindfulness training, all of that I completed. That was really the impetus for what I mentioned earlier about that problem I was going to have with my son and not being in his life. And so that's where I really hit rock bottom and turned things around. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. Other board members, questions for Mr. Potter? Reverend Hancock.
I have two questions, Mr. Potter. Did you know that the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office and the Milwaukee County Judge both support your application?
No, I did not. I remember sending it along to them and was hoping so, but I had not heard back. That's really good news.
How does that make you feel?
That makes me feel great. This was 25 years ago now. I was hoping to be forgotten of, but if they support me, that's even better.
And tell me about the Milt McPike Scholarship Fund.
Yep. So Milt McPike is very well known, was principal here in Madison East High School. And that was a scholarship that me and some friends, after he got sick and passed, decided that he had touched so many of our lives that we wanted to do something for him and to keep his name, known. And so we got together. I have some great friends who do development work, and they were able to raise enough money. We gave that money then to the school foundation here, and that money will perpetually churn out interest that we use to create this scholarship. I've been a part of the awarding committee where we pick the nominees and the scholarship recipients, and it's been really rewarding for me as well to just hand over that check to give those students something in this man's name after he gave us all so much. It's been great to go back to my high school and to do that, to take the time and show everyone that we care.
Yeah, he was an amazing guy. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cindy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Potter. As part of the application process, letters of support are encouraged, and you did not submit any. Can you tell us why not?
Yeah, I did not. As I was reading through that, I saw that they were recommended but not required. In the 12-step program that I'm a part of, anonymity is just a major factor. And I thought it was going to be a bit too much for me to ask that of the men that I sponsor, for them to put their name on something like that. So I wanted at the utmost to respect their privacy and do that. It's just not something that I felt that I could do. I just really wanted to protect other people's anonymity.
But certainly there's family, employers, friends, neighbors. I mean, there's a whole host of people you could get letters of support from. It wouldn't have to be people that you sponsor in AA.
True. Unfortunately, with the stigma of this conviction, I was really scared to really let anyone know. It's pretty terrifying to even be speaking to this group and to have this public setting. And I was ultimately just scared to ask other people who didn't know. I didn't want them to think ill of me or to have it impact me in my life in some way.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Potter? All right, seeing none. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Mr. Potter, and for taking the time to come today. Like I said, you can expect to hear from my office in about a month. We'll get back to you if you have any questions. In the meantime, please feel free to reach out. And with that, you're welcome to enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon. You do not need to hang out in the Zoom. And thank you for your time.
Thank you all very much.
All right, our next applicant is Albert Charles. Mr. Charles, are you able to hear us? And can you unmute and turn on your camera if you're able? I see your square in the Zoom, Mr. Charles, but I'm not able to hear you. Okay, seems like maybe Mr. Charles is having some technical difficulties. So I'll ask someone on my team to reach out to him and see if we can get those sorted out. In the meantime, we can move to our next applicant, which is Daniel Voss. Mr. Voss, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, we can hear you. Can you turn on your camera if possible?
It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So,
Let's try that.
all right, let's see if it goes now. Okay.
There we go, excellent. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sorry, is it Voss or Voss?
Voss,
Voss.
with two S's.
Thanks, Mr. Voss. We'll just ask you to give us a brief summary of the crimes you're seeking a pardon for today, how your sentence went, what you've done since then, and why you're seeking a pardon.
Sounds great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you guys for taking the time to listen to my story and a part of my life that I'm not too proud of, but today I'll tell you a little bit about it. My name is Daniel Voss. I'm 43 years old. I currently reside in Oconomowoc with my wife, and we have an 8-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son, and 1 dog. Basically, things started off for me a little bit before all of this incident with the felonies. I was about 14 years old. Unfortunately, came home one day to my dad wasn't there anymore. my parents had decided to get divorced. It was kind of a sudden, very sudden thing that happened. I was kept out of the loop for pretty much everything. Prior to that time in life, I was a very good kid. I had straight A's across the board. I was at every sport you can ever imagine. Killer attitude, big heart, everything was in the right spot, and came from the way my parents raised me, but unfortunately things happened there. And when that happened, I basically went into shutdown mode, turned off everybody else around me, kind of went into just be by myself for a while and try to figure out life for a little bit. And that was one of my bigger mistakes. One of the only people I had to look up to in life was one of my older brothers, who was unfortunately into drugs and stuff at the time. So I thought at that time it was a good idea to follow in his footsteps. And that's kind of where things started to go downhill for me. After a few years of getting into drugs and using drugs through high school, I was about 17 years old when there had been some rumors going around the school about me having drugs and stuff like that. So unfortunately, the police came and raided my mom's house, found 7 grams of marijuana. At the time, I wasn't home. I showed up at the house later, ended up going to court at a later date, pled guilty to the possession, got put on probation for 1 year. And unfortunately, that wasn't enough to get me straight or to point me in the right direction at all. I made more poor decisions and basically kept rolling down the same road I was heading down, into more drugs and more drug use. And I moved out with some friends. We moved down to West Dallas, got a place together, kept on with the partying lifestyle and everything. I had a girlfriend at the time. I think she pretty much got fed up with the lifestyle I was living. We ended up breaking up. She ended up calling my probation officer about 11 months into probation and told her what was going on in our house with the partying and the drugs and everything. So she ended up reaching out to me, had me come in for a meeting. And when I went into that meeting, I got detained, taken directly to my house. We went into my house, they searched our house, and they found 1.7 or 1.8 grams of marijuana, a big large baggie full of baggies with marijuana residue in them, which we had stated to police later. That was from when we had our parties. We'd have people over and everybody was, doing drugs and partying. So basically I was arrested at that point, put into Milwaukee County 6th floor felony pods on a probation hold. She put a probation hold on me and kept me there for the full 30 days. And at that time, they actually released me. They weren't supposed to release me, but I think that the 30 days, the maximum for a PO hold or something. So I was accidentally released. Contacted my attorney when I got out, ended up, he contacted her. They said, turn yourself in immediately, but do it to Waukesha because that's where I was supposed to originally be expedited to. And she had not filled out the paperwork for it. So turned myself into Waukesha to face my revocation hearing for the probation that I was on at the time. Went through that, got found guilty, got revoked, did 60 days. They gave me a big break because I had turned myself in and because of the 30 days I'd already spent in jail. So the judge cut me a great break. Completed that, and it literally was a day or two after I got out of there when the new charges dropped for what I had originally gotten into trouble for during the house search. And now I was being charged with 2 felonies. One for party to a crime of keeping a drug house and one for felony possession. In Milwaukee County, your second offense is an automatic felony possession. So preparing to plead guilty for those. It was my second court date. Being an idiot again, I grabbed my roommate's car, got myself down to the court date, did the court date. Everything went fantastic. I was on my way back and I looked up and there was a police officer attempting to pull me over. And at this time it was flight or fright mode for me. I instantly pulled off the highway. I ran like one stop sign, made another turn, pulled over, and I got out and I ran. At that time I managed to get away from the police officer, only to arrive at my house 2 hours later and he'd already been there and knew who I was and had left his card and said, turn yourself in, young man, or we're going to have bigger problems. So I immediately called him, arranged to meet him at the district attorney's office, met at the district attorney's office. They met for a moment, they came back out, and then they arrested me again for fleeing in a motor vehicle. Shortly thereafter, they ended up deciding to put all 3 cases together. I went into court and pled guilty to all 3 of them because I was absolutely guilty of all 3 of the things that they're charging me with. Just wanted to kind of get it on and over with at that point. And they sentenced me to 3 years of probation, 9 months on one charge in work release, and 3 months on another on work release. Went to the work release program, got through everything there, got through the probation just fine, paid everything off. And ever since then, I had 1 speeding ticket about 15 years ago and a second speeding ticket, unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago. But other than that, I've literally flipped my life around 110%. One part I kind of left out a little bit there is 2 weeks before my sentencing, I actually met my wife, my current wife. So she met me in a time when I had to literally explain to her, I'm going to jail in 2 weeks and I need somebody to pick me up for the next year. So luckily, I was pretty much the luckiest man on the face of the earth when she decided to say, hey, I'm going to stick here with you and help you through this. So not only did the system work for me, as in getting arrested, being put in jail, being locked away from the things that I wanted and I thought I needed, and being able to sober up, being able to have that time to think and get that clarity. I can actually say the system worked very well for me. The second time around, when I actually got locked up, I could say I regret some things, but I'm glad this happened to me. I was heading down a very, very bad path in life. Right after my dad left, my best friend committed suicide also. And it was going to probably me or him in that situation at that point in life. So it was just like getting hit left and right at that age and that point in time in my life. And I really had nobody to fall back on or to talk to besides my mom, who I unfortunately treated like crap that entire time. So just took a lot of time for me to get through that part of my life. But when I got out of jail, I actually had, while I was on work release, permission from the judge's order to work 7 days a week. I had started a small business just before that. And I had another full-time job at Quad Graphics working 12-hour shifts. So the judge gave me a court order to be out there 7 days a week working. So I was able to, for almost that entire year, just work really hard, think a lot, get clarity back in my life. And by the time I was done there, it was kind of nice. I was set with a little bit of money in the bank and I had my mind clear and I knew what I wanted to do with myself. And I had a beautiful woman to do it with. So the system actually worked for me. So that's pretty much the story of what happened. And I did make it through everything, made it out the other side. I feel fantastically. Since then, I had a business that I owned and operated with my wife for 18 years that we sold about 5 years ago. About 7 years ago, I invented the greatest invention in our industry, period, I think. It's a remote controlled tree removal truck that you can literally sit in a lawn chair and take trees down with. You may see them running around the city of Madison out there. They've actually purchased 1, if not 2 of my trucks, which is used as the forestry division out there. I've traveled all over the country. I patented that device. I ended up selling those patents to a company. Ended up traveling with that company and pretty much got to go from Maine to California. They wanted me to go into Canada a lot of times. Unfortunately, I couldn't go. We had to send another representative. And I've been as far south as Chile, Santiago, Chile, putting our trucks on display and doing demonstrations with them. And then I actually circled back around and trained the first 168 vehicles that went out. So, and then on top of that, I also got to take our technology out to California to help with the wildfire cleanups, where we built a team of 52 guys and 16 of our trucks. My wife and I did. Took our kids with us and everything, moved there for 2 years. We recently sold that business and moved back to Wisconsin and started another one. So things are going fantastic with that new business. And we've come full circle. And I kind of got into it a little bit, but I think of the reasons why it was successful for me was because of the system actually worked. I needed it. I needed it to work. I needed my ex-girlfriend to make that call to get me in trouble. I needed to go through that whole process in order to be where I'm at in life today. Meeting my wife was the other incredible part of it. And the reasons why I'm seeking a pardon, I spoke a little bit to it, was the ability to be able to travel for a business. And we're also launching a franchise here soon, and franchise law doesn't allow us to operate in a few states if I'm on paperwork at all whatsoever. So that's been kind of a bummer trying to work through that. And I just basically want to be able to tell this story as I've told it a lot of times in my life. I've told it to a lot of people to try to help out friends and family that are struggling with similar things. And I want to be able to tell them I came full circle and that I was able to accomplish, getting forgiven for some horrible things that I did when I was a young man.
Thank you, Mr. Voss. Any questions from the board? Cindy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Voss. Just a comment. I actually went on and watched the video of that you cutting down. I think that's you, right, with the remote control.
Yes.
It's incredible. I mean, the enhancement to safety, right? No one's in a bucket right around the trees, and how did you hatch that idea?
Well, I spent, unfortunately, when my dad left out of the scene, fortunately, another man stepped in. His name was Mr. Tree, a local tree climber here in Heartland, Wisconsin. And unfortunately, 2 years ago, we lost him to a sudden heart attack. But he taught me everything I know. And I climbed trees for over 20 years and did bucket truck work as an arborist, a certified arborist for over about 20 years now, too. And I have a wild imagination and the ability to engineer things. So I literally built that very first one right in Lisbon, Wisconsin in our shop. And then I sent some videos and messages to Alltech. There's a huge corporation that builds those type of trucks and ended up getting it patented and selling those patents. And now they're literally being put out worldwide and saving lives and doing great work.
Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
I noticed the other thing is that you have one letter of support. It's from your mom. So you've made amends?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's always loved me unconditionally, no matter what. Even through all this and everything that happened, she never stopped loving me. I just stopped loving myself for part of it. And this would be a big part to be able to, finally complete it and say, hey, Mom, look. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Voss, for joining us today and for sharing your story. Like I said, we'll be in touch. Someone from my office will be in about a month or so. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this. We'll let you enjoy the rest of your Friday, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, I think that Albert Charles is now. Mr. Charles, are you able to connect? Oh, Mr. Charles, I'm still not hearing you. All right, let's try asking Mr. Charles to unmute. Mr. Charles, are you able to hear me? Okay, we're maybe still having some tech issues. So Justice, if you could follow up with him again, I would really appreciate that. And in the meantime, we will move to our next applicant, which is Diana Higginbottom. Ms. Higginbottom, are you able to hear me?
I can, but it does say that the host stopped the video. Oh, here we go. Now, okay. There it is.
Excellent. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief summary of your application, what you've done since the completion of your sentence, and why you're seeking a pardon today.
Sure. My name is Diana. I am 52 years old. Grateful to just have this opportunity, no matter what. My first crime was back in 1997. Where it happened twice with two different employers, to where I was trusted. I was a trusted employee, but I embezzled money from the employer. I probably need to rewind a little bit farther back because it's not an excuse, but it is a part of the story. I was adopted at birth and put into a family where they were divorced by the time I was 2, and which led to a not so good childhood, to where I wasn't I didn't know. I wasn't able to sort it out, and I did admittingly turn to drugs. Probably anything I could get my hands on, but most prevalent were pills. I was trying to kill a pain that I didn't know where it came from, and I certainly didn't understand it, but I did know right from wrong. So I am not making an excuse. So I embezzled the money to, one, feed my addiction, and two, I was trying to be somebody that I just wasn't. I was masking it with things that I could buy with this money. I mean, it's as embarrassing as it is the truth. I was incarcerated after the second time, and I firmly believe that it saved my life. But I took a lot of good out of the incarceration. Once I came out of the cloud and was who I was without having the effects of drugs, I learned that I had a greater purpose. I was involved in any program that I could get involved in. I would network with other women. I just made the use of my time to where all my days were filled. I would help teach in my spare time, because I would go outside and work into the community after so many years. I can't remember the exact amount of years. So when I was released to a drug treatment facility. It was after 4.5 years, because I was ultimately sentenced to 10 years in, and then 10 years probation, or once my restitution was paid. So I believe it was about 4.5 years, and I was paroled out, and I went to a treatment facility in Racine, where again, I was able to now reintegrate back into society with the same skills that I had learned, and utilizing the same purpose that I didn't know I had all that time, but it wasn't until I was sober. I continue to do the same things. I serve my community well. Actually, I say it humbly, but I started a nonprofit in my basement in Racine 14 years ago. And now it is across 3 different counties, and serving underprivileged and people that might not be able to have a Christmas. So I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the way that it networks other people to be able to help, and businesses that get on board, and it's a community. And most recently, finding my biological family has probably been the biggest piece of my puzzle. And now utilizing what I learned through that journey, I do speak at the state level, bringing mental health awareness and just knowledge, what the effects of being an adoptee may have. Not because I actually adopted my daughter, so I'm not against adoption. I ended up getting married. I am now widowed. However, just did everything right now. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes in life, but the bad, I think long and hard. I don't make bad decisions. Life matters, and I do believe that I was never a victim. I do believe I was chosen, and all of those tests that I went through that were self-inflicted are now my testimony. And to be honest and open about that, I believe I've at least helped one person, if not many. So that is, I do have steady employment. Had worked at the same job 15 years up until later last year, where I wanted to do more with what I knew, and now I'm actually a sales manager. And just recently, because I love baking, I found refuge and therapy in baking and giving people food joy. So just recently opened a coffee. Well, actually, we close on April 1st, to where I'll open a coffee and bake shop, and love to garden. And I one of my favorite things is I raise monarch butterflies, because they just show that circle of life, which is so symbolic to me. So that's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I may have missed going over everything.
Thank you, Ms. Higginbottom. No questions from me. Other board members? Questions? Reverend Hancock.
Can you talk about your relationship with the is it the Sizikowski family? And they had a small propeller business, right?
Correct.
And that's where you sold the money. And what was the effect on that business?
It's bad. It was bad with that business. Just not only what I did to him personally, because I did deem him a friend and he had kind of taken me under his wing. However, flash forward, probably it was right after my husband passed, probably about 7 years ago. He actually reached out to me through my agent, through my parole agent, and because I wasn't allowed to make contact. I was actually really afraid to do so. So it took me 3 months to actually put a phone call in. And out of it was probably the best milestone in my life where he gave me forgiveness. We kept in contact, and unexpectedly, just a few months later, after he had actually advocated for me to get released early and I had paid the restitution, he unexpectedly passed away, literally within days that we signed the paperwork. But I do still talk to his daughter. We are friends. I was able to help his wife as she lost her husband as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, Ms. Higginbottom.
I apologize. I do have a question. And maybe this was the question that Jerry was asking, but I'm not connecting on this one. So the restitution ended up being a combined of 47,000, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in there.
Yes.
And the victim agreed to have $10,000 cover that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the conversation? What brought that about? Because that is a significant difference between a 47,000 and 10,000. Can you help me? What brought all of that about?
I was paying restitution all along. So quite honestly, I don't have the exact dollar amount, like while I was incarcerated and then the years to follow. But when Mr. Sizikowski and I had talked on the phone, I honestly, I don't know why he was so kind to me, and why, he had agreed. But when he had just said, here in this moment, what could you afford, to give me? What could you settle on? And that was the amount. I actually, my husband had purchased for one of our anniversaries. He had purchased a motorcycle, and that's what I had sold to do it, because I was content with his forgiveness, but he just really wanted to make things right and had a certain maybe undeserved sympathy for me just with the journey, because my agent had told him that my husband had recently passed. It wasn't anything that I told him. And so, yeah, it was a testament of the good man that he was.
Thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Higginbottom. Appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us today. As I mentioned, someone from the office will be in touch with you in about a month or so. And you are free to go enjoy the rest of your Friday. You do not have to hang out on the Zoom, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, I think, Mr. Charles, do we have your audio issues sorted out?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Excellent, loud and clear. That is perfect and very exciting. Mr. Charles, we'll just ask you to briefly go through a summary of the offenses that you're seeking a pardon for today, how your sentence went, what you've done since then, and why you are seeking a pardon.
Yes. Back in '94, I was involved in a drug ring, and my cousin had wanted to collaborate with to get an ounce or 4 ounces of cocaine, and eventually he showed up to the spot that we were at, and I ended up going to a barbecue and had him to meet me there. And at the time, no one could find the drugs. So the police came in, laid us all on the floor and arrested me. They found the firearm in my car, on the floor of my car, halfway under the seat, halfway out, in which, in that situation, I went to trial and I received 78 months. 38 months I did incarcerated, and 40 months I did on the street. And thank God that my boss allowed me to keep my job. So when I got out, I was back working at Snyder and Vetter as a glazer, which I've been doing since Job Corps, right after high school. And I ended up getting married. I had a son prior to my marriage, which I had full custody of, and I raised him. He's in the service now, making it military. And I had 3 other kids with my wife. And we, unfortunately, I got a divorce 8 years later. And I started traveling with my son nationwide because I'm a union glazer in high-rise construction. And I've been trying to teach him as well as my kids, the right way to go. And I wanted to piggyback off the first guy because the system worked for me as well. But you got to want it to work. And I've been glazing for well over 35 years now. I'm in the state of California, which I piggyback from California to Georgia. I live in Georgia, but I come to California and work because my trade allows me to work. And I want to experience working overseas, which I can't because of the felony. And I just thank God that he slowed me down at the time that he did, because I was heading up the wrong path. And I've been teaching glazing in the state of Georgia, and I've been mentoring the young kids that comes through. I remember when I was the young one on the job site. Now I'm the oldest one. And I'll be trying to mentor them, talk to them, to treat work as a career and not as a job, trying to receive a check, and take pride in what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Questions from the board? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Charles, do you know that the Milwaukee County Judge and the Milwaukee County DA both support your application for a pardon? How does that make you feel?
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's truly a blessing. I've been trying so hard to stay on the right path, and just to hear that, wow, wow. I feel good about that alone, versus the party. It's wow.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Mr. Charles, you touched on your son a little bit, I think, and from looking at your application, it looks like he was present when you were arrested. Could you just say a little bit about that, please?
Well, no, not exactly. It was his sister that was present. She was 1, and I thought that she was mine, and she wasn't. His mother was 7 months pregnant with him, time that I got incarcerated. And when I got out, I asked her for custody. He was 3 years old, and he was on a roll from pre-K through college. I'm very proud of him, very proud of him.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Charles, for taking the time to speak with us today and for bearing with the IT issues. Someone from my office will be in touch in about the next month or so. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. And hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday. You don't have to hang out in the Zoom. You are free to go and enjoy your day.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, our next applicant is Kimberly Berger. I believe I saw Ms. Berger in, oh, here we go.
Hello.
Hello, and is it Berger or Birch? I'm sorry.
So yes, I am married now. My last name is Birch.
Got it. Ms. Birch, thank you so much for joining us. Would you just walk us briefly through the offense that you're seeking a pardon for, how your sentence went, what you've done since then, and your reasons for seeking a pardon today?
Absolutely. So first off, thank you for having me today. I appreciate that. I want to preface this by saying that my crime I committed was 23 years ago. Prior to that, I was a straight A student. I was in advanced placement classes my entire school career. I was raised in a two-parent household with my brother. My parents are still married today. My parents raised me with good morals, good ethics. So I don't have like a family history or anything like that would make me commit the crime. I was doing well in school. I had everything handed to me. I was on the right path. And then I took a detour. So at 17 years old, I guess I was young, dumb, trying to fit in, find myself. I fell in with a crowd that was much older than me, probably 10 years my senior. This older crowd was full of career criminals and drug addicts. I have never, ever touched drugs in my life. So I don't know why I so badly wanted to fit in with this crowd, but back then, for some reason, I wanted to. So what happened was these people that were trying to support their drug habits and maintain their lifestyles would go around and steal checks out of mailboxes back when people used to mail in checks for their bills. And so they would kind of, canvass the neighborhoods, look for outgoing mail. And if there was, they would steal the mail that was in there. And then they would alter those checks and make them for higher amounts or whatever. And then I knowingly cashed them on my own bank account. My bail jumping charge stems from a supposed friend using a stolen check to purchase some stuff at Kmart. I did know that stuff was stolen. I knew better. I should not have done it. I can't even give you a logical reason as to why I did it. I was sentenced as an adult back then. I think, and even now, Wisconsin is one of only 6 states that automatically charges 17-year-olds as adults. So I was charged as an adult. I was ordered to jail time and a significant amount of probation. I think it was like 10 or 12 years. That time reflected the significant amount of probation or restitution that I was going to have to pay off. The restitution ordered was joint and several, so me and my co-defendants were supposed to be all responsible for it. But in order for me to get discharged from probation, it all had to be paid in full, and they didn't care who paid it off, me or them or anybody. I did call around when I got the notice for the pardon hearing to try and figure out how much I had paid. Unfortunately, because it was 23 years ago, I talked to probation, I talked to the clerk of courts, and nobody could really give me a dollar amount, but I know it was a lot. I paid that restitution in full on my own. And so I was discharged from probation after 4 years. I believe that is like 6 to 8 years early. So yeah, my probation officer wrote me a raving review, and I was seen in front of the judge and ultimately discharged early. Since then, I've gone to school. I have maintained good employment. Every position that I've held has been a management position. I've had access to credit card records, checking account information, personnel information, none of which I would ever think to misuse or abuse. I have 3 children now. Most significantly, my husband and I moved to North Dakota about 8 years ago. North Dakota's been really good to us. We're both working. We just strive to be really good parents. We are heavily involved in our kids' extracurricular activities. Our boys play sports, so we do a lot of concession work and coaching and refereeing and all of that stuff. My boys play AAU basketball, so we also travel a lot. I have not withheld any information from my kids as far as my background goes. My 19-year-old son knows very well what I did as a 17-year-old. And when he hit the teenage age, I prayed every night that he would not make any life-altering decisions, because this felony has cost me a lot. I have a pretty outstanding resume. I never have a problem getting the job. Matter of fact, I think that I've been offered a job at every single interview I've ever gone to. Unfortunately, when my background check comes back, oftentimes those jobs are rescinded. So I am hopeful that a pardon will help with that. I do want to travel internationally with my kids one day, just to show them, life outside of the United States. I also want some redemption, just for my own peace of mind, that the state of Wisconsin has forgiven me and seen that I have changed my life. I guess that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Birch. Just one question for me. I see there's a misdemeanor from 2015 on your record. Could you tell me a little bit about what was going on in your life then?
Yeah, so unfortunately, that stems from a money order being given to me. A person that my husband considered a brother to him was at the bar one night. A woman dropped the money order. He picked it up. He handed it to me. I cashed it. She later reported it stolen. And I was in the process of moving. I did not qualify for a public defender. We could not afford an attorney. I do believe I was charged as a misdemeanor, and I think later on it was dropped to a citation, if I'm not mistaken. I did try to look that up as well. It doesn't show up on CCAP anymore, so the information was minimal. But that charge does not show up on my background check. I actually just had a background check for a position with the city of Bismarck. That charge does not show up. It is always my felony charges that reflect on my background and are the reason for my job offers being rescinded.
Thank you. Questions from other board members? Cindy?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. So why did you cash the money order?
He didn't have a bank account and had asked me to cash it. It was not made out to anybody. It was not addressed to anybody. It was literally a blank money order.
But it wasn't yours. I mean, you knew it wasn't yours.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I also did not know it wasn't his, but that's neither here nor there. Tough lesson learned.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the 2006 arrest for the misdemeanor unlawful use of the phone to threaten? What was that?
Yeah, so that actually stems from a relationship that I was in. I think Ramona Gonzalez, the judge, spoke on that case when she returned the letter for my pardon. It was a abusive relationship. And when the police came, we both went to jail. I was in hysterics when they came. Had I kept my composure and if I had kept my composure, the police probably would have listened to me better. But at that point, that relationship had just come to a head, and I left some voicemails on a woman's machine that he was seeing at the same time, and they were not nice.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Birch? Reverend Hancock.
You know that the judge supports your application. Did you know the DA also supports your application?
I did not. So Ramona Gonzalez actually emailed me a copy of the form that she filled out, and I heavily thanked her for her support. I did not know that the district attorney had even responded. So I guess, you know, whether or not I get the pardon, having their forgiveness and support is a little bit of redemption for myself, although it's not going to be on paper anywhere. It does mean something to me.
Thank you.
Cindy?
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask this.
You do follow-up.
You may have heard other applicants if you listen, but the part of the application process that encourages letters of support, and you did not submit any, and I'm wondering why not.
Correct. So although I'm very upfront during, you know, the application and interview process with every position I've ever held, usually that information is kept between me and HR. So a lot of my employees that I've managed or my coworkers as far as other management on my team, most of them do not know that I'm a convicted felon. And so I didn't want to share that information with them because I'm already ashamed of what I've done. I certainly could have had several friends and family write support letters as they've all walked side by side on my journey. But I sort of feel like those are sort of cliche because of course they're going to support me. I dug this hole myself. I want to get out of it myself. And so I guess that's where I'm at. I knowingly did not submit letters of recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Birch, really appreciate you coming and telling your story and speaking with us today. As I mentioned, you should hear from my office in about a month. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Benjamin Kotke. Mr. Kotke, can you hear us?
I can hear you. There we go.
There we go. Mr. Kotke, first of all, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Actually, you are. Not many people do. So.
Okay, bonus points. Thank you for joining us today. Would you mind just walking us through a summary of the offenses you're seeking a pardon for, how your sentence went, what you've done since, and why you're seeking a pardon?
Sure. Back in 1998, I was a 17-year-old kid, semi-homeless, into drinking, you know, just wild kid. You were walking one night and we came across a concession stand, kicked the door open, basically looking for food, whatever. Found none of that, took a bike helmet, ended up getting charged with a burglary for that. Well on bail, went out with another friend, driving around, smashed some mailboxes. Once again, stupid kid stuff. Not safe, regret it. Got charged for that. Got charged for criminal damage to property and bail jumping. All these charges were read in together. I ended up getting 2 years probation, 30 days jail with restitution. I served that 2 years probation and had no revocations, nothing like that. Paid the restitution. Been off probation ever since. You know, completed it without issue. Well on probation, I actually had to ask my PO, but I started a business back in late 2000. I'm still running that business today. We are one of the largest roofing siding companies in the area, going on 23 years. 2004, I married my wife. We've been married for 20 years now. We have 2 kids, 16-year-old son, 14-year-old daughter. My son he is me, but he's not me at that age. He is great in school. He's being actively recruited across the Midwest for football. My daughter is a 4.0 student. She's in the orchestra. We had an orchestra concert last night. All the things that I was not doing at that age. My family, my kids are my greatest accomplishment over business, anything that I've done since. Other than that, besides honestly just working on my business, raising my family, I volunteer in the community. I've been, a donor to the Junior Football League, a booster to the high school program. I sit on the board for Fond du Lac softball. We've worked with Habitat for Humanity. We've donated our services and our materials to at least one family a year that's in need of a roof for repairs and just can't afford it. Also done that with like a women's shelter and just wherever we see that, somebody needs a little bit of help. Stay busy just through sports, exercise, healthy, positive things. The reason I'm asking for this is, a few things. One, it's just been a kind of a huge weight on my shoulders the last almost 25 years now. I'm not that person I was at 17. I don't even recognize that person. Also, on a professional side, we're unable to bid on certain projects due to background checks. And if we do, we have to be a subcontractor, not a prime contractor, because I don't know that I would actually pass the background check to get onto my own project when it comes to state projects, prison projects, military, stuff like that. We have done military projects. Somehow I've passed some of those background checks. The prison ones, they told me not even to bother. Like for instance, today I got an invitation to bid on Waupun Correctional Institution. There's no point, we're not gonna, even if we're awarded it, we're not getting it. Also, as far as, business goes, I've been doing this a long time. I've made a lot of connections in the insurance world. And my kids are at an age where they're going to be out of the house soon, probably 10 years. And me and my wife have talked about, kind of slowing down this business, traveling more. And I would like to join a catastrophe team for the insurance companies. But one of the requirements is background check, no felony, stuff like that. So just, kind of where I'm at with things. I know I was pretty brief with that, pretty quick, I guess. I don't know if you guys have any questions or, anything regarding it, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll open up to questions for the board, none from me. Anyone, any questions? Reverend Hancock.
Did you know you got a really supportive letter from the judge in Fond du Lac County?
Actually, I did know that. He was not the judge that presided over it. That judge is since retired, but I did see, they did mail me his recommendation. So I did see that.
How did that make you feel?
Pretty good. Just kind of validates, I guess, what I've been trying to do the last 20 years is just kind of stay on the right track, be a good person, be a normal member of society, not be that dumb, wild kid that I was. And, at 17 years old, I didn't think past the next day. I didn't think I would ever be sitting where I'm sitting today at 41. I didn't think about the future. And, I've worked really hard to kind of change that course from where I was to where I am now. And this is one thing that still kind of weighs me down from my past, I guess, is this conviction. And, that's everything else about me right now is 100% just your normal everyday person, your normal business guy, your normal, buddy, your neighbor, except for that, and do I regret doing it? 100%. Was it wrong? Yes, it was. Do I feel bad about it? Yes, I do. But it's just not me at this moment in my life, and it won't be. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taki. Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us today. We'll be in touch in the next month or so. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to the office, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Simon Warren. Mr. Warren, I believe I saw you on Zoom. And I will just note that Reverend Mitvicker will be abstaining from participating in voting on this application. But with that, Mr. Warren, if you are able to give us a brief summary of the offenses you're seeking a pardon for, your sentence, how it went, and what you've done since then, we'll turn it over to you.
Hello, I am Simon Warren, 51 years of age, I think it's been 26 years ago. I was out drinking with my friends after work, drinking, left the bars, went to the after hour, and decided to go to a house to have sex with a female. You could get a room in that house. And when I got to the house, someone asked me to sit at a table where they had drugs on the table and keep an eye on the table. I wouldn't have to pay for my room. I agreed to do it. People came in and purchased drugs off the table. I didn't have to touch anything. After about 30 minutes of sitting there, I was like, this is stupid. And I paid for my room and went to the room. And when I was awakened by the police had came in. They had busted the place. Was taken to jail. Got out of jail and got a 9-month sentence with a 7-year state sentence and 4 years of probation. Completed my probation. Didn't reoffend, went on to continue working, did a lot of work in the community, got involved in politics. Was a poet. So as a poet, it kind of brought me alive, and me and my friends were doing poetry all over the city. I wrote some plays, was hired by UWM to write, direct, and produce some plays for them. Got involved in politics, and that was very exciting for me, and I was good at it. Went on and did work in Chicago for some years, acting political director on a few campaigns. Came back to Milwaukee and became a community organizer for the Harambe Ombudsman Project. The Harambe community, worked closely with alder folks, worked for a lot of politicians. I opened up a coffee shop in that process, done a lot of community work all throughout the city, worked with just about every community organization there is in the city, working with youth, working with prisoners released from prison through the fatherhood program. I've done a lot, worked with a lot of businesses. I worked as an assistant to one of the legislators and got over $1 million in grants for different businesses doing that. But I think my biggest piece was being able to go into some of the schools and do poetry workshops. Always wanted to teach, but the felony stopped me from being able to teach. I see a lot of different things that I could do to change the forecast for young folks and their education and what I see going on in the classrooms. So that's something I would like to be able to pursue and work closely with the schools to fix some of the issues that they're having. And also the fatherhood program has been very rewarding, seeing men who get out of jail, who come to the fatherhood program and healthy relationships and having I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of conversations. And I even listened to what folks said today in their I'll just call it testimony, just about the stigma of being a felon. For years, I hid that I was one, didn't tell people, didn't share it. So when folks found out I was a felon, they were shocked. I've worked for everybody. I've been to the White House, worked for a president, got Secret Service clearance, all this as a felon. But it still was a stigma. And I began to start to share with the men in the program, because many of those men in those programs felt like, I'm a felon, there's nothing I can do. And so one of the big things for me is being able to get a pardon, so that can be part of my testimony about you can make bad decisions, get in trouble, but you can change your life and get on the right track. And you can be forgiven for those and have a new lease on life. Look at me, here's my example. This is what I went through. This is where I am. And I received a pardon. And then using that pardon also, like I said, to go into schools and do work. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Forgot to unmute myself. Fellow board members, questions for Mr. Warren? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Warren, did you know the Milwaukee County DA's office supports your application for a pardon?
I did not. I am pleasantly happy and joyful about that, because I've worked very closely with them through my community, especially in community organizing in Harambe community. I've worked very closely with the DAs and the police officers, and created programs. Harambe is one of the well-organized community set up into clusters, and I was able to help set that up and create, between all the different block clubs within Harambe, set up a communication forum where residents have a direct link to officers and can report crime. And so I've done a lot of work with them, and I am pleased that they support me and recognize my change.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Warren? All right, Mr. Warren, thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your story. You can expect to hear from someone in my office in about a month. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out. And with that, you are welcome to enjoy the rest of your Friday. You do not need to hang out on the Zoom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, our next applicant is Raymond Lewick. Mr. Lewick, I think, yep, there we go. Would you please?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Would you please just walk us through very briefly the charges that you were convicted of, how your sentence went, what you've done since, and your reasons for seeking a pardon today?
Okay, thanks so much for the opportunity to address you. My story is pretty much the opposite of everyone else's. I've had a great life, did everything right. I was a licensed psychologist for 35 years, dedicated my life to serving others. I served as a missionary overseas. I've been involved in leadership positions through my church, and have pretty much been an exemplary individual. In 2008, my wife divorced me, and I moved into an apartment and was rather lonely. So I took in people like another guy who was divorced, and a few other men, and then kind of helped them out, helped them get on their feet, and it gave me some companionship too. I took in a family that had a mother or a grandmother, mother, and a daughter, and they were living with me when the daughter was arrested for robbery, being party to a crime. She was housed at Techita Correctional Institute. I would take her daughter up to visit her, and during the process of all these visitations, ended up falling in love with her. She contacted me once stating that she had stole drugs from a drug dealer inside the prison, and that her life was being threatened, and that she needed to replace the drugs, where they would come after her and harm her, kill her. I don't know what. So it was an act of the heart, not to help myself, but I broke the law. She told me I would be bringing some Xanax, and she kind of explained to me how I would go about this, that it was done all the time. It ended up that the drug dealer who contacted me to supply the drugs ended up giving me heroin. And so I transported heroin into the prison. Not a good smuggler. And so I was caught delivering heroin. The DA wanted to sentence me to 5 years in prison because obviously it's a horrible offense, something terrible. And my life has been filled with shame over that ever since. As a Christian, it's a pretty horrible witness to God. But I had good support from the people that I've helped, and the judge seemed to understand my situation. I was given a 3-year sentence where I only had to serve 6 months behind bars and the rest was on probation. I think because it was a crime committed in the effort to help someone else, that probably went in my favor, because that people often can get off if the crime is to help someone whose life is being threatened. So I did over 3,000 hours of community service while I was on probation. I worked at a food pantry, serving the food needy. I've had a few other seasonal jobs. I've applied to over 150 jobs, but whether it's due to my age, my felony, or being overqualified because I have a PhD, I've been rejected 150 times for applying for jobs. A lot of them I'd go to the interview, it would go real well, and then they'd find out that I had a felony, and all of a sudden I would get a letter stating, we found someone who's more qualified for this position than you are. But I've continued to do volunteer work through my church, applied for other jobs, and like I said, picked up some seasonal work, but like recently was doing some construction work, and I'm not a 25-year-old anymore, and I hurt my back, and so I had to leave that job. So again, the reason I'm requesting a pardon is that so that I could be renew my license or reinstate my license as a psychologist. Right now, I specialized as a child psychologist, and the interesting thing about this is that my specialty was non-medication alternatives. So I would get kids off of Adderall or Ritalin, get adults off of medication for depression, anxiety, help people with drug, alcohol problems. So for me to be arrested for a drug offense just doesn't make any sense at all. It's just totally mind-blowing. My kids, because I guess I had a good reputation before, was arrested for this. My kids have broken contact with me, and that's broken my heart. I have 7 grandchildren, 4 of which I have never met, because my children, just can't see how I did what I did. So just to get a job, to get housing, I've been rejected for housing because of my felony, and I would like to maybe do more mission work again, but to travel to other countries with a felony is not easily done. So I guess that summarizes where I'm at and what I've done.
Thank you, Mr. Lick. Questions from fellow board members for Mr. Lick? Reverend Hancock.
Mr. Lick, I may have missed this. I lost connection for a minute, but you were in a relationship with this woman and her daughter before she went to prison. Is that correct?
Correct.
And now she is out of prison and living in Milwaukee. and you are living in Waukesha, Wauwatosa,
West Dallas.
West Dallas. Have you had any contact with this woman since she got out of prison?
Yes, I still have a relationship with her. You know, her mother and father passed away. She has no family, so I'm kind of like adopted her as my child and help her and her daughter on occasions, and you know, I'm kind of a support system for them. She's also she was a drug addict. She's gone through recovery. She's been certified as a peer support specialist, so she's gotten her life together. She's doing real well. You know, I have a good relationship with her and her daughter.
Okay, and again, you may have covered this when I was offline, but do you feel you were manipulated into buying this heroin?
It was obviously an act of the heart, not of the head. You know, I knew it was wrong. I did believe that her life was being threatened. So I did it out of, I don't know, maybe a hero complex that I wanted, you know, ride in on my white horse and rescue her. So, you know, I think there were some bad motives on my part, but yeah, I was genuinely convinced that her life was in danger, and if I didn't do something, you know, something bad would happen to her. So,
okay, knowing what you know now, do you believe her life was really in danger?
I really don't know. I do believe she stole the drugs. I don't know what would have happened. If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't I wouldn't do it. So I think then it was just, you know, her desperation, her, you know, panic and my gullibility, you know, that I just went along with it and, you know, thought I could be a hero in some way.
Okay, and do you understand that heroin inside prison is a very dangerous thing?
Yes, I do. And again, I didn't know I would be taking heroin in. I was told I would be taking Xanax into the prison, that I was given heroin to take in instead. And
do you have any thought about putting other people at risk by what you did? There's nothing in your application about that.
I mean, obviously, taking heroin into a prison is extremely dangerous. Someone could overdose or be harmed by it. So, yes, I know it was an egregious act, and you know, I take full responsibility for it. So that's where, you know, as far as being manipulated, I don't want to put the blame on anyone else. I just want to put the blame on myself.
Thank you, Mr. Ulick. Other questions from board members? All right, hearing none, thank you very much for your time today. You're welcome to drop off the Zoom, and you can expect to hear from our office in about a month. Thank you, Mr. Ulick.
Thank you very much.
Our final applicant today is Sabrina Jackson. And I see Ms. Jackson on video now.
Yes.
Please briefly walk us through the charges you're seeking a pardon for today, your sentence, how it went, and why you're seeking a pardon.
Okay. Hello. Thank you guys for hearing me out today. I'm Sabrina, and my charges were possession with intent, party to a crime. It was back in 1999. I was around 22 at that age with 2 children. And I wasn't present when the crime happened, but by it being my house, and they found some drugs in an extra room, they were gonna charge my mom with it. So by being my house, I took the responsibility for it. And by me knowing that I didn't sell drugs that day, but I have had sold them previously, so it was only right that I took up for what I did. Since my conviction well, my sentence, I'm sorry, was 10 months CCC state sentence and 4 years probation. I completed my probation. Well, I was released from the House of Correction in 2000 and I finished my probation in 2004 with all restitution paid. Upon being released, I came straight out. I got a job working at Taco Bell to help support my kids, which were left with my mom when I became incarcerated. So I worked for Taco Bell for 5 years. And after working with Taco Bell, I went on, I have attained 3 to 4 degrees since my conviction. I'm currently working at Further Hospital, but I have worked with special needs and disabled elderlies and special needs children at MPS, Manitoba School. And currently I'm working at Further as a medical assistant, which is one of the degrees I got after completing my sentence and everything. I also have a CNA degree. I have a human service degree also that I would like to utilize. I applied for several jobs, and due to the felony, I'm not able to work for like state, a municipality, anything that is government funded. I can't work for. I have applied to be case management, supervised visitation worker. I would like to become a foster care intake worker, but by me having this felony, I'm not able to do that. I wanted to pursue nursing also and wasn't able because of the licensure. Can't be a felon with being a nurse. My ultimate end goal is to become a social worker so I can focus on the elderly population, which what I work with currently and have worked with previously. I did have letters of recommendation, but I mailed them in after I mailed in the application. This is my 3rd attempt at a pardon. I have applied when the one before Scott Walker, the governor before Scott Walker. I applied with Scott Walker, and then now I apply with Evers. And I'm just hoping that it was a 1999 conviction. Since then, I haven't been in any trouble. I attend church. I volunteer. I volunteered at the pantry on what we call that, Fond du Lac. So where Wisconsin. So I did service there. I do service at my church, which is Greater New Birth. We have a food pantry that we service there. I just really think that the pardon will help me be able to support my family more, which I have 4 kids and 4 grandkids now. And I just want to show them, because you mess up, you can, go ahead and correct it. Because while I was incarcerated, I did receive my GED, and then I came out and used that to help me further my education and get the jobs that I can get until, if granted by the pardon, a better job so I can help take care of them and help get back to my community.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Questions from board members for Ms. Jackson? All right, seeing none, I have no questions. Your materials were very thorough, so thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us today. You can expect to hear from my office in about a month. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of your Friday.
And thank you guys for hearing me out, and I appreciate it. And you guys enjoy your Friday as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that is the end of our applicants that we'll be hearing today. So at this time, the board will be moving into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 1985, sub 1, sub A, D, and F, for purposes of deliberations concerning cases before the board, for the purpose of considering specific applications, and for the purposes of considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories of specific applicants and people. Do you have a motion to go into closed session? From Cindy, all right, and do I have a second?
I'll
From
second it.
Anthony. Any opposed? Hearing none, we will move into closed session now.